Good evening and welcome to the special meeting of council. It is January the 9th, 2024, 6:30 PM, and I will call this meeting to order. I'll remind members of council of disclosures of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. This evening, we will be dealing with the 2023-2024 operating budget draft. I will look forward to report TR 0124 by Lauren James, Treasurer. All yours, Lauren, for the next 2 hours or more.
Thank you, Your Worship, and members of council. Before you this evening tonight is the 2024-2025 operating budget draft. This operating budget represents the 11.34 notional value increase over the 2023 levy, or the equivalent of a $651,300 tax levy increase. We work in notional versus mill rates. I will explain the impact of mill rate below. How this impacts a typical house at 250,000 assessed. Local in charge increase will be 203.43. Farm at 400,000 assessment, 74.86 increase. Commercial at 250 assessment, $333.14 increase. And industrial at a 250K assessment of $452.65. Like in the past, this represents a 2-year operating budget for demonstration purposes. So 24 to be approved in principle and 25 to give council a guiding light of what, the anticipated headwinds financially as well as any upcoming challenges in 25 represented. We did have some additional items that we've used to bring down the operating levy via the capital budget. A couple notable ones is proposed capital adjustments that remove $590,000 off the tax levy, or a 10.2% in tax levy pressure. This will also bring the OSIP and gas tax reserves close to a net balance. It still allows the 25 envelopes to be funded when we receive those funds, and we still have a portion of the road construction reserve in 25Bs as well. At the time of our capital budget, staff were unaware that our OSIP was going to be cut. Unfortunately, this past year we were reduced 10%. It's unfortunate. Couple that with the reductions in ONPF, MPAC slowing down and not performing the phase in of the book. We had a net or net neutral assessment for the year for 23 to 24 over new assessments. So all these different tailwinds that are out of our control, unfortunately, have impacted and brought some of our tax increases up. As proposed, the 5 items identified are the Stewart Bridge, tunnel line culvert, and the toll gate road, the gravel program, and the sidewalks. All programs will continue in 24 except for sidewalks, which will be deferred until 26. This will also be staff's recommendation to defer sidewalk in 25 and coming back with, I would consider, a large or a jumbo size sidewalk program in 26, upwards of 300 to 400,000 in capital works to make up the backlog. So the above changes will actually improve the net levy, which is where we got to our 11 position tonight. So these proposed ones will help us get to the 11 number. Without the proposed ones, we would be looking at a 22. Obviously, there's still additional costs that go along with our budget that we have to highlight. Currently, inflation is between 3.3 and 3.5. As noted, we had an ONPF reduction of 10%. It's safe to assume that in 2025, conservatively, we expect another 10% reduction. And we have to continue with our capital program funding increase. Staff are strongly recommending a 5% increase, to keep up with original AMP requests, as well as compounded non-residential price index increases. As well as, unfortunately, this year our insurance premiums have been more stable on their increases than prior years, so that is positive, but it's still 5% and above inflation. However, with our budgets in the past, we've always showed an explanation of what is considered discretionary or non-discretionary or legislative versus non-legislative. 14.2% of our total budget is basically service level expense. And of that is the $330 thousand debt servicing costs related to Project Ojibwe. So of that number, we have about 800K that is up for council consideration. However, some of those will already have procurement tied to them, contracts, tendering, and other things consideration. So council is thinking about what costs could be reduced. That's the window, the non-legislative or the service level discretionary stuff. I.e. parks, tourism, recreation, museums, some of the stuff that is non-legislative. We're coming out of the COVID pandemic-19. There is some uncertainty around transfers. I would caution and remind council that with this past year having the OMPF reduction and the OSIF formula for the funding reduction, there is potential that in the future we could see reductions in transfer provincially and federally as they work to get their books to balance. Noted the impact, the phase-in. Municipal treasurers throughout Ontario are hopeful that the phase-in will actually come back in 26. We anticipate it won't come back until the next provincial election. OMPF is noted. And then obviously we have Project Ojibwe debt renewal or elimination in March of 2025. That carries $1 million line item for 2024, which council has as their strategic priority #1 in their strat plan. Without this would be an impact and bring our levy down to 6.3. Without having to use all the capital funding that we did and above for the projected amounts. Foreign exchange and financial markets will likely be a lesser headwind this year. The Canadian dollar has stabilized in the last few months, so obviously there's a little bit of pressure if there's a run on the Canadian dollar or inverse. So those are kind of the main overview points. We stayed with the same budget consultation dates as we had in the past. We've got here tonight for the meeting, and we've got the budget consultation comments from the public as an addendum tonight. All the stuff's been available to residents to either write in, communicate, email in. Some people hand wrote notes and when they came in for to pay their taxes or bag tags about items that they want on there, so they've all been incorporated tonight. I'll let the CEO kind of elaborate on a few things and work through the addendum notes.
Thank you, Lauren. So the first point that I wanted to bring to council's attention is we've included some budget resolutions that council had passed over the course of 2023 to be included in the budget discussion. So the first are a pair of resolutions from the August 17th meeting, stemming from recommendations from our two primary advisory committees. So the first is a line item regarding bioswale maintenance, be referred to the 2024 operating budget for discussion. We have included bioswale maintenance when considering the 2024 operating budget, so that has been included. There's also from the Museum Advisory Committee, including expenses for the moving of the lifeboat into the museum in the applicable budget. This can also come up during the budget discussions tonight. At the September 7th, 2023 meeting, there was an item from the Public Works Department pertaining to a hanging basket sponsorship program. And this discussion was referred to budget deliberations. So it is before council tonight as well as an item for discussion purposes, should council wish. At the November 2nd, 2023 meeting, there was correspondence received from the East Elgin Community Assistance Program. This was referred to the 2024 operating budget as well. And at the December 7th meeting, there was correspondence received from Suzanne Schlotzhauer pertaining to request for action for the lighthouse. This has also been referred to operating budget discussions. And as an addendum, there is correspondence from the Stratfordville Hall Foundation regarding the ISIP grant for the Stratfordville Community Center expansion. With respect to operating budget consultation results, these are compiled as well. They are in your report package starting on page 8. So we received fewer comments than we have in previous years. And given how lean this budget is and with respect to the overall levy impact, most of these were not included in the scope of what is before council tonight. So we did receive a couple of requests regarding new streetlights. These have cost implications between $5,000 and about $11,000. These have not been accounted for in the operating budget, have not been included. There have been a couple of comments regarding beautification in some of our hamlets and villages. Beautification, again, was not prioritized in this budget due to a very little discretionary allocation available in the draft budget. A comment came up regarding the municipal accommodation tax. Now, this is not something that council has discussed since early 2022, and no further consideration has been given since. There's an additional question regarding additional boards and committees. This is something that council actions through resolution. Council has not provided direction for any additional boards and committees, and this is not being considered for 2024. However, this may be a consideration after the next election in 2026, when that new council-elect determine the committees they wish at that time. There were a few questions that came up. One was pertaining to activities in parks. It's worth reminding council that the municipality does not have a standalone recreation department for programming and advertisement. This is operated as part of the Public Works Department, but we do not handle our own year-round staffing or programming in this regard. With respect to community engagement, we do not currently have a standalone community engagement strategy. Council provides on a one-off basis the direction that they wish to have for community engagement on new initiatives. We do also, as a reminder, have the new website available that has a news module for public consultation. Comment about Phragmite mitigation at the municipal beach. This was included in a report from the Public Works Department at the December 7th regular session. Comment regarding repurposing of the dredging reserve, using it either allocated towards the Ojibwa bioswale maintenance, Phragmite mitigation with the lighthouse. So this has been repurposed as a lighthouse reserve at the November 16th meeting. Final question or comment received pertained to hedges and beautification. So comment from the Public Works Department is that staff could remove all hedges in this area. However, their funding would be needed to add new hedges. 17 spruce trees have also been removed from the park in question. And the comment about policing also came out in a roundabout way for the capital budget. This is a contract level service. And if speeding is a problem, as residents have done, they can submit correspondence to council for consideration, forwarding on to the respective agencies, or they're encouraged to contact the OPP directly. And with that, Mr. Mayor, those are the council resolutions and results of the consultation period for the operating budget. And I will leave it with you and the treasurer.
All right, thank you, Thomas, for that. To you for recommendation how to dispose of these.
If council has any specific questions or comments regarding any of the items noted in resolutions or items that were brought up through the consultation, they can bring them up now for discussion.
Right. Does anyone wish to bring any of these items forward? Councilor Chilcott.
Thank you. I just wanted to look at the one for the accommodations tax. Is that something that we want to review for this next year? I mean, we sent a letter of support for it, and there's something going forward at upper levels, but is there something we want to do to implement a tax or review it more closely?
Just a quick comment through you, Mr. Mayor. There was a report received by council. I want to say it was April of 2022. I believe the original motion was brought forward by Councillor Donnell. And council directed further information come forward in a staff report that was provided by the treasurer. It was received for information, no further direction has been provided at this time. So if council wishes to further direct staff regarding a tax, then we would need that direction.
Thank you.
I guess the question to put forward to council members is, has there been significant enough change since the 2022 report to merit revisiting the issue? Do you think there is a threshold that can be met to make such a scheme, should we wish to implement one, manageable and workable? I don't know what the answer is. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Just a comment, that's something that the Roma board, we've been discussing that quite in length, and there's been some ongoing investigations and discussions, especially around the rural table and how that looks for smaller municipalities like ourselves. I'm happy to have a discussion with Roma and perhaps bring forward some information for staff in that discussion and information gathering that we're doing there, but it is still ongoing, I can tell you that.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's not an easy fix. Anything further? Councilor Chilcott?
No, that was just what I was wondering, because I knew there was something going on, and it was with Roma. Where they're looking into it more and more, because it is becoming a problem for a lot of places where legitimate people are renting out their houses and going through all the hoops, and then others are not. And so it's just to level the playing field more so than anything else, and make sure that houses are safe, whatever it is that the board does. So I just thought that might be something we want to look at in the grand
Future.
scheme of
Yeah.
things.
All right, thank you. Turning back to the comments and or the submissions, even including the addendum, is there anything else that anyone wishes to draw attention to or discuss? Okay, a lot of the comments, I'm gonna throw my 2 cents out there. Comments received in the addendum, there were a lot of ones. And I think we're in a position, probably agree that we are in a very much needs-based environment, particularly when we're looking at potential over 11% levy for the budget. So it has to be, in my mind, a very important want if council wishes to entertain it. That's my opinion. I think we're in an environment where we have to be needs-based. We have to focus on those things that we absolutely have to move forward with for the betterment of the community, to either position ourselves for future brighter days. If we don't, I think we're going to cost ourselves more. So just a cautionary tale out there. I would say also that if some of these comments and or submissions that were given to us do not imply a direct levy impact, maybe it's something that we don't need to actually make a decision on tonight. Silence prevails around the horseshoe. All right, do you want to revisit these things towards the end, or do you want to simply receive for information at this point?
Revisit it again.
Fair enough. We will move forward. Lauren, can you take us through this, through your presentation a little further?
Will do, your worship. Let's start on page 12. Summary of revenues. 2024 total revenue, for the municipality, including capital, excluding the levy as of today, will be 6.4 million. That excludes what the final tax levy will be. If we include the final levy, the number will be just a shade over 12.7 million. The summary just kind of highlights the year-over-year revenues and expenditure changes in each of the departments. So I think it's more clear to get into the other revenues and look at department by department. And then as we go through each sheet, that'd be the time to ask the question. And I'll highlight some the pressure points in each, so that way council's aware of. So in other revenues, obviously OMPF reduction, that's the first one. We were trending 905, 870, 905, 897. Now we're trending down to 850. Interest and penalties have come down. Our arrears has come down. It is slightly up the end of 23 compared to 22. And we have improved our investment yield, which is positive. Obviously, we still have our utility corridor money comes in, which goes to our trail transfer. That's other revenues. I don't have any questions. I'll move to the next sheet. General government, pretty flat for 2024 in revenues. These all reflect the current rates and fees, so you're gonna find a lot of the revenue lines will have moderate increases. Big headwind here is little up in payroll to reflect the market check, as well as change in position. Some more in legal. Now, obviously, the legal, and I'll highlight this is we're on page 17 of the PDF. Obviously, they're, as I noted, legal. Obviously, when we have an integrity commissioner review, corresponding cost of that in 23, that was just under 18,000. So that's here, as well as when you're dealing with appeals at OOT and other legal matters. So that number has been increased for 25. Otherwise, it's pretty consistent. 25, we are showing a portion of the debt servicing for Ojibwe that will come off once council makes a resolution of what we're doing with the debt renewal, whatever the case may be, at March of 25. This budget really reflects current cost plus inflation for general government. If there's any questions in this department, I'll take them now.
Tell us which page you're moving to. Lauren.
Page 18 next, council.
Yeah, mine's different too.
Yeah, mine's,
Yep. So you're gonna have to come up with a different.
Okay, on your,
Council.
mine printed out,
Okay.
so it starts at page 1.
Yeah. I think so.
I'm just
you're on-
going page by page.
You're on other revenues?
No,
No,
council.
council,
Page 10.
Fire
General government. Council, there you go.
council. All right.
Yep, there you are. That's 19.
all right, that's 19. So, council, again, just reflects inflation for council remuneration, as well as some expenses for costs and seminars. Really isn't much change here. We don't have an election expense until 26. So it's or I consider this a status quo or inflation backflows. Yes? Your deputy worship?
Yes, thank you through you, Mr. Mayor, if I may. Just the sundry line. We typically have a budget of 1,500 there, but our expenses are showing a little higher. I'm just curious as to what that umbrella is for and if that needs to be increased.
That would be any time when council submits for direct expenses like mileage. That'd be for when you submit expenses for any training or education materials.
Okay.
Further questions? All right. Yep, Councilor Joe.
Thank you. Just a clarification. You said sundry for revenues is mileage and, but then we have travel and sundry
Sundry's expense.
in the expenses.
Yeah, so you can have sundry in council if there's a special donation fee or other. Sundry is just to use basically another word for miscellaneous or other by county definition. In expenditure, sundry covers your mileage when council submits for anyone that submits their annual mileage, or as any training or development costs that they submit.
So is that not covered under conferences, seminars and travel? Or is this just miscellaneous?
It would fall under that if you're going to like Obra or Good Roads or whatever the case may be. But if you're asking for submitting your expenses, which counselors can do,
Mhm.
it would fall under the sundry.
Thank you.
Right? Moving on to fire. Revenue wise, it's fees, services, basically cost recovery or through Fire Marquee or any MVCs that we're able to bill out. As for expenditures, slight increase in the fire remuneration. To bring it more into actuals compared to budget. Also reflect current inflation of the fire remuneration costs. As well as a portion of the chief is now all in fire versus a portion before it was in bylaw. So that's basically the top two main drivers. And additional expenditures in 2024 for training education for new recruits, as well as uniform supplies and materials. Again, it reflects inflationary on a few lines, but there is some lines that if you want to clarify, we can do that.
Okay, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. Just to clarify the line 5104, what is auxiliary firefighter remuneration? It looks like a new line.
So that would be when they go for a special course or training outside of the points.
Your worship, auxiliary firefighter is a cost that we do not pay our auxiliary people, our recruits, to go for their training. Upon their completion of training, we give them a
Like an honorarium?
thank you, that's exactly the word I was looking for, an honorarium of $500.
Got you.
So that's
Okay,
what that is for.
thank you.
Any other questions in fire? Moving on to police. We're hopeful to have some of the POA revenues start to return in 24 and 25. Unfortunately, we have yet to receive any revenues in 23, but the county treasurer assures me that we should soon start to see some POA returns, so I'm hopeful on that. We no longer get the cannabis funding, so that those sundries no longer exist. And the service contract reflects our current Elgin OPP billing. And then the fees and services, the prisoner court transfer service fee that we share with the county and the lower tiers. Moving on to the Conservation Authority. It's the CA as the levy amount that they requested at your last council meeting, which showed the levy request for our band portion, which is 105,747. And then our tree program that we have that we've done now for the 4th year. Actually, this will be year 5.
Okay, Lauren, that program was expended out last spring, correct?
Correct.
So is the actual number correct here?
That's the actual year to date as of December 1. So we are still under that envelope.
We were able to meet all the requirements as subscribed under that particular program at 3,800. Okay. 3,500, excuse me, no, it's 38.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Just to add on that, your worship. We did have more subscribers than, I think, half of them almost had to go down to 2 trees. However, we are in for the Tree Canada application right now as well. So with any luck, we don't fall under all the criteria, so it's a far throw, but we're hoping that maybe we'll get some additional funding from that.
All right, thank you for that. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. I'm very sorry, but could we just go back to police services? I have one quick question there, Lauren, and I didn't get in there under the wire.
It's okay.
The 2023 actuals at 697 is significantly lower than the other years, and I was just curious as to.
The county treasurer's behind in billing cycle. So generally, that's usually 2 to 3 months. So if you see an actual line, so this, just so council's aware, actuals represent as of December 3rd of
Third,
23. If, for instance, we were short a billing cycle or a revenue cycle or a relating expense, as you also see, we've yet to get the fees and service charges from Central Alberta. We've had years where we didn't get it till a year and a half later. So we're gonna have situations where they're gonna be behind. When it comes, we'll expenditure it. But usually the county treasurer gets me and the police reconciled usually the first week of February, if not the last week of January,
Thank you very much.
which also covers the PSB costs as well.
Okay.
Building services. We're anticipating a conservative down year in building permits. Unfortunately, we went from 192 to 100,000 actual in building permit revenue. So we did not meet our 212 target or 190K target in 23. So we're more conservative on our approach on 120. What that means for expenditure side, as we need the building services or our shared services, then we pay for the expense. So as need on demand service. The rest of the department is pretty stick, small little bit of materials, a little bit of overhead shared with the general government support staff. And the shared service agreement is billed and coded in the sundry account. Moving on to bylaw. Now that we have a full-time bylaw officer, the sundry line in 24 and 25 represents our anticipated shared cost billing arrangement with Malahide, so that it will be to offset the bylaw enforcement officer's time when he's in Malahide, and we bill based on monthly and quarterly basis based on actual costs. So we do that up every quarter, and that's what we're anticipating based on what we had since we had the bylaw officer first time in Malahide. The rest is all statutory. Obviously, you have payroll, stat benefits, some enforcement costs, and then some sundry for miscellaneous materials and other expenditures, as well as a little bit of training and education. This is a new ad. We added this last year in 23. So this represents a full annualized expense for this department. So this does add to the levy, but it also improves the level of service that we're offering our ratepayers. And this was something that council wanted to add in 23. If there's no questions here, we can move on to the next one.
2 years, where is the revenue line for Malahide?
That
Or
is in-
est- or
that is
even
in the-
estimated, so we don't know if that's like, if we're winning on the shared services deal.
So through your worship to Councilor Emerson, if the bylaw officer goes and spends an hour in Malahide, we bill them 100% for the direct time for his wage, plus all the auxiliary, statutory, and non-statutory benefits. So that is reflected in the sundry. That's what I anticipate, that we will be billing Malahide for his time to offset his expense, like salaries and wages, like stat benefits, like non-stat. And then we're also anticipating whatever shared materials or expenses we buy, we split them 50-50 with them, provide that it supports both locations.
So we haven't sent them a bill yet?
I did the 1 quarter in September and I billed I billed Malahide just before December. Like before end of December. So if you would like to know what we have billed them today, we had billed them today 23.5. But by the time of the presentation of this budget that was posted, this represents December 3rd actuals, not today.
I think to clear up some confusion, I think, Counselor Emerson, you want to look at line 4150. That's the sundry line is what he's referring to. That's the revenue expected from now. For 24 actual or budget,
Okay,
okay?
well, I still don't see how we're respectfully,
Yep.
I don't see how we're winning, because the 46 is in there and that bylaw thing more than doubled. So how are we winning on that budget estimate? I thought we were supposed to save money in shared services, but it looks like we're spending 51,000 extra.
We went from a 30% coverage to a 50% coverage on bylaw enforcement.
Yeah, just to clarify. Before shared services, we had controllable hours in at around 550 hours a year. Now with a full-time bylaw officer, we control somewhere in the area of 1,300 hours a year. Substantial increase in controllable hours that the municipality now has to increase the level of service. I expect there's going to be a report coming to council either January the 18th or February the 1st that is going to outline how the level of service is increased in bylaw. It's also going to cover building services. So I'll leave that with you.
Okay, supplemental then, still, then I would expect the same thing in the estimate for sundry, but that doesn't seem highly to offset that because they're spending time in Malahide, but 46,000 doesn't equal the billable hours that he must be spending over there.
Can you answer that, Lauren?
Yeah, I can answer that. So, when this budget was posted, we posted actuals as of December 3rd, 2023. On December 22nd, we billed Malahide an additional 16,000 for the 4th quarter. That brings that total just a shade under 23,000.
Yeah.
We've had the service since the first week of July. Therefore, the anticipated cost recovery from Malahide to use our service is 46. Based on what we've already anticipated and have used based on actual for the first 6 months of the agreement. And as for your question about the net difference, so the net difference in the service adds 20,000 in levy year over year from 23 budget to 24. But as the CAO noted, you got that much more in bylaw hours than you had before for $20,000.
Okay, but it still seems like 46,000 is an appropriate share of the 150, of the 51,000 increase.
Through your merit, respectfully to the counselor, we billed 23 for the first 6 months. 23 times 2 is 46. That's how we're coming up with the estimate.
Well, my point still stands. It doesn't look like we're winning because we're still extra. After you
What-
sum it all up, we're still 100,000
What-
extra.
What he's trying to suggest is the expenditure for bylaw enforcement is more than what you're recovering. You're not recovering half of the costs is what the expectation, I think is what the council.
We're buying
Counselors.
55% of the bylaw enforcement's time. Malahide's buying about 45%.
Okay, that's the equation then that, to balance it out there. So we're using more than Malahide. It may come to another. or
It might
may
switch.
Switch, and, they may end up using 60% of the service. Huh. And if they do, it'll change on the books. Conversely, you go back a page and look at the building services. And, look at the change over there. We are actually. Where are we?
12% less. Figured it out.
All right, thank you. Yep. So our cost for building services is estimated to be 104. With permit fees about 120. Now, that doesn't mean anything because if our fees and activity goes up, it'll cost us more because we're buying their time.
Yeah, I get that, but we save 12% there and 51% here. It doesn't,
Yep.
doesn't seem like a fair. I think we're getting short end of the deal, actually really do. Oh yeah, I am muted. I'm sorry, because the thing's buzzing. So I'm sorry, it just doesn't seem like we're getting fair end of the deal. I'm sorry, like if we save 12%, hey, that's great. But we spent 100% more in bylaw. It doesn't seem like that. I don't, however you want to say it, it doesn't seem right.
I understand what you're getting at. There was a decision of council to put in or enhanced bylaw services. And there's a cost that comes with it. Deputy Mayor, you had a question?
Yes, thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. Just to confirm, Lauren, the actuals on 2023 under the expenditures for 69,000, does that include what you've billed Malahide?
Through your worship to Deputy Mayor, how we bill, we
Mhm.
take the expenditures on the gross and we bill our cost recovery and the revenues.
Mhm.
So we have 69,000 expense year to date. 13 is the second party. So we bill based on
Ah.
bylaw officer's time and all the shared material on a 50-50 pro rata split. And it's unfortunate that the way the billing structured time with this,
Right.
but if Malahide uses him for 2 hours a day, we're billing those 2 hours. So it's not a loss to BAM. But if we want 2 hours of service, then we're taking 2 hours of service, and that is a portion of the tax levy. They use, they bill. We use, we pay.
Right.
There's no in between here. I don't know what.
Yeah, no,
It's a level of service. You're getting more procured hours and improving the level of service as a council requirement and something that you guys wanted in 23 and brought forward.
supplementary.
Yeah.
Just to clarify as well, uniforms and the change in
Split.
logo
It's
is
split.
split 50-50.
It's split.
Thank you very, then that was billed then.
That's
Yes,
already been billed, and that was billed at the end of December with that amount.
okay,
And we do that every quarter. I sit down with the bylaw officer. We did that just before Christmas. He can attest because I was frantically trying to get that done. So that way Malahide had a very good idea what they can anticipate, because I want to bill actuals, not estimates.
Mhm.
So that way, if there's ever any sort of contesting, we have it based on his time log and it matched expense. So that's how we're structuring. Every quarter I do that. And if their treasurer and council want it on monthly, we'll adjust accordingly. But both the treasurer, myself and Malahide's treasurer are in agreement on that structure.
thank you.
Yes.
Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. So Lauren, a little simple math question. I just need clarification. I'm not good at math. So we got 46,000 sundry, which is income,
Cost recovery,
okay? Cost recovery. We have 115,000 in expenses.
net of 69,000. So-
Net.
So bylaw operates at a net loss of 69,000.
So let me finish my question. 46 plus 115. Malahide and Bayham are paying 160,000 for,
No,
No.
No.
Malahide and
so where
Bayham,
does the 46,000 go away from the 115? That 96, that's not the number.
through your worship to Councilor Frost, 46 is on Malahide's
I get that.
books for
I get that.
expenditures.
I get that.
Our net cost is 69.
Okay, 69, not 96. Okay. I
So if
understood-
we bought,
misunderstood that.
if we bought the bylaw officer from Malahide, we
Yeah,
would have
okay.
69 as expense with no revenue.
Okay.
You're going from a
Kind
69,
of misunderstood you there.
Yep,
I
but
turned
you're
the two
going
numbers around. Yeah.
you're going from a 69 in 24 from a 51. So an $18,000 increase in this department for the additional service hours you're getting. We can quantify how many more service hours between that, if you want to know the 18,000 of how much more an hours you're getting.
Yeah.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if we annualize it, we're at least double the hours that we had in 2022 for bylaw enforcement. We project based upon a 60% rate for the municipality of Bayham, around 1,200 hours compared to 500, 550 prior to shared services. So we're getting an extra 600 or so hours for $18,000. It's not too bad. It's like that's $30 an hour essentially.
34.
Yep. And what I can advise in looking at the rough statistics or preliminary statistics in discussion with the bylaw enforcement officer, our closure rate is higher than it's been since I've been here. We're around 86%. We're currently at a 19-day rate from date of complaint to gaining compliance, which is more than cut in half the previous timeline. And date for initial response is also cut in half. So the level of service provided for bylaw enforcement has substantially increased for $18,000 or essentially $30 an hour. And preliminarily, I would suggest that is a win for the municipality.
Counselor Chilcott.
Just wanted to, excuse me. On top of that, we've got a full-time fire chief, whereas before he was split, correct?
Yes, the fire chief was split previously. About 30% of his hours were going to bylaw enforcement and the balance is going to fire. And due to legislative pressures, that would no longer be functionally possible. So hence the shared service arrangement.
Anything additional?
Moving on. Moving on to roads now. Revenue side, our grants and subsidies come from the road maintenance agreement with the county. Sundry comes from any cost recovery billing we do with the county or any of our neighboring partners. Obviously, we have permit revenue and that. Basically, the big cost drivers in public works are we've got some additional labor we brought in, anticipate for 24 due to some staff absences. We have increased materials. Vehicle maintenance has went up, so we've reflected that. Unfortunately, our equipment is getting a little bit longer in the tooth, which when we have a repair or a breakdown costs substantially more. And the rest reflect truly inflationary costs. Unfortunately, in 23, some of our lines we weren't able to hold as hard as we could in the past. Weather events, material increases, and a higher need than in the past. We've done a lot of deferrals in the past few years to try to keep public works manageable and controlled expense, but unfortunately that levy has broke in some areas, and now the costs reflect truly what it maintains to have your basic operational public works road network service. If council has any line items they want to discuss or overall feel of the department budget, myself and the road superintendent or manager of public works is here to answer any questions.
All right, any questions for Lauren? I have one identified I'd like to ask about. I'll give council a chance first. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. The grading materials line 7660 is been consistently at a 0. What would that pertain to, and should we just remove that line altogether?
I usually leave that line in because it gets mixed in with grading materials and loose top. So sometimes the two work together depending on the project or maintenance, so I usually leave them in. Loose top and grading sometimes can mix together on their application or expense or the road it's on. So those 4 lines really blend in. It's more or less how does the whole body work for loose top and grading work together. As we proceed and do road conversions through the years, we will see improvements in those lines. But some of our loose top and grading roads did need additional expenditures going forward until we get to those conversions.
Yep, supplementary.
Supplementary, just a couple more. On the locates, I see that there's some expense there, but I'm just, is that drainage locates? Is that something new or?
That could be locates for natural gas, for utility corridors, multitude of things, but I'll let Steve rate to that. I know they do charge us the locate fee service.
Is that a new fee? Cause that's the first time I've seen expenses under that one in the budget cycle.
Pretty sure that's the administration charge that the locate fee is now charging us. And I do believe we have the option to bill back to the landowner if we choose.
I was just curious if it was a new
I'm
line.
looking at
That's okay.
I'm pretty sure that's the administration charge that the locate company is charging us. But I can clarify that expenditure line. Council wants.
Yeah, I've never seen that one before. That was the only reason I asked on that. Just one final question, if I may, through you, Mr. Mayor. On the advertising line, it has gone down to 0. I'm just curious if if that advertising will impact the tree program. Or if, I'm just curious as to what, because I see you dropped that off the budget, but there was some expenses in the past.
So generally with the advertising throughout all the departments, we put it in the general government. If we have to pay for a paper ad or other, if we're able to use internal sources in-house, i.e. our tax newsletter or correspondence or email or website, then we'll put it there. But as for advertising in a whole, we've been trying to, years ago, we consolidated all the advertisement in general government and use it as a consolidated base and approach.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
All right, any others? Yes, Council Pros.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Vehicle repairs and materials, like a $45,000 increase. Do we know which vehicles are in such need of repair or what materials?
Through your worship to the council, this past year, we had 5 out of 9 vehicles exceed greater than 12 or more thousand in repair bills and expenditures. Because our fleet is getting long in the tooth, and because we've had issues with procurement, we have tandems coming but not ready yet. We have to put a Band-Aid on until the equipment is here. We're trying to baby them as much as we can, but when all of a sudden you got a piece of equipment that needs 4 tires, you're out 10 grand. Or when you have a hydraulic line break, you have this.
Just a quick note, if I might, Mr. Mayor. Council will look at the 2021 and 2022 actuals. We were up around $175,000, $180,000 in maintenance in those years. We had budgeted 110. So yes, we are down a little bit on maintenance requirements for this year, but this is 3 years in a row where we've been over what we had projected for materials, which necessitates an increase in budgeted amounts in future years until we can start to replace rolling stock. And if there's any questions about any specific vehicles, Manager of Public Works is here as well. So that's sort of the rationale for why we sought to increase 2024 and 2025 budget on that line, because now we have 3 years of actuals that have demonstrated actual expenditures in that general range.
I think they must have answered the question, but stay right there, Steve. I have a question for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, safety devices, 7810. You got a 35,000. Yeah, let's go to 22. 26,000. What's the 48,000? Tell me what the safety devices.
Yes, so
Materials.
safety devices covers safety devices, generally signs. Signs is the big
Okay.
one. So as you guys know, in the past, fines have been a bit of a pain on the budget. However, this year, sign stayed underneath the budget line. We had a lot better year. We didn't have a lot of trouble vandalism and however, moving into our new year, we have lost our reflectivity contract with Malahide. Reflectivity probably will be brought forward to council if we have to do this in-house. There'll have to be a purchase of a gun to do this, a special device and a program, or we can sub this out at a cost with my estimates that I got will be between 17 and 20,000. So we had to put, now these reflectivities, this is under the minimum maintenance standards. It's part of the RMA. We do cover the county roads under the roads maintenance agreement. So this is a mandatory requirement from them, as well as it is for the Highway Traffic Act and minimum maintenance standards. So that's the big push. Generally, we left the original line where it is and hope that we have another decent year with that. However, we did add the cost for the reflectivity testing to make sure. And I will be giving council a little bit more information on that when we're ready to go with that. Hopefully some alternative maybe to bring that cost down. So.
All right, thank you very much for that. Additional questions from anyone?
Yeah.
Deputy Mayor? Deputy Mayor first.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just a quick question on that, Steve. Just hypothetically, if that goes back, that we are responsible for reflectivity, is that part of the sundry line in terms of revenue like, will we get some money back from the county on that? No, because we care for the county roads, it's still just out of our pocket. Gotcha.
That
Okay.
would be under grants and subsidies when we're taking care of the county roads.
Okay.
Counselor Emerson.
Mr. Mayor, what does that mean exactly that we lost the contract with Mala?
Well, I shouldn't say, so we were sharing their GIS services. Malahide had some staffing issues this year and they could not provide their reflectivity testing. Malahide, Elmer, and ourselves were all, and one more, and and the county roads on those systems were all part of that system. So unfortunately, we were notified a little later in the summer that they could not provide the reflectivity this year. And it kind of put us in a spot that at the end of the year, coming up with $20,000 was, it was a little tough. So moving forward, that's where we are with that.
Okay, thank you for that. Counselor Chilcott.
Thank you. So you said everyone lost their reflectivity contract with Malahide? So then who's doing it for the rest of the areas? And are we going to try and get in with that?
That is a great question, Counselor Chilcott. Next week in the county roads meeting, on the agenda, we have shared procurement on the line, and my number one thing, talking to the road supers across the county, will be sign reflectivity. So again, would be a great option as a shared or a bulk procurement contract that we can bring one contractor and might do 3 or 4. And that will, and talking to the contractor that provides that service, that'd be a very, very big increase or decrease in cost if we can get more signs on that list. We're dealing with about 2,500 signs that have to be tested, so it's very labor, like even in-house for us to, generally it's 2 to 3 weeks of in-cab walking, and pretty much you're touching every sign is what's happening. So, yeah.
Any additional questions on the public works? Thank you very much for that education.
If there's no further questions in Public Works, we'll move on to the next one. Winter control, it's basically 2023 minimal inflationary. We had a good winter this year, but we kept it conservative and we anticipated an average normal winter. So that's what reflects in the 118.
Lauren, what are the anticipated revenues under sundry?
That's the cost recovery we bill back to Norfolk for Highway 19.
Thank you.
And a little bit of contract reimbursement for material that we have as an agreement.
Thank you. Okay.
There's no
Okay.
questions there. We can move on to streetlights.
Yeah.
Very much inflationary to actuals. Utilities are coming up a bit. Our hedge is still helping us, but it all comes down to number of usage hours in the hydro, basically. Our maintenance has been really good in this account. Other than 23, we had a little bit more maintenance, and that was just to do some council requests from one ratepayer. And that was Grace, I believe. If there's no questions here, we can move on to wastewater. As with wastewater, it only covers up until December 3rd, 2023. So you'll notice that there's a 2-month billing cycle not here reflected. We're still working through those billings, so I am looking closely to make sure they meet that. Because wastewater is a net tax neutral It does not impact the tax levy. It is still needing to be approved by council. The biggest takeaway is how do we project for our year-end reserve transfer? There is some down pressure. We're not able to consistently meet the reserve number. Mr. Rolls and his department have been very steadfast in keeping costs controlled. However, there is a few lines that they've been struggling with keeping close to inflation. The biggest takeaway is we're anticipating right around 261,000 in transfers. Last year we budgeted 368, but if you notice, we've averaged actuals anywhere between 228 to as high as 422. The other thing to take in consideration is we no longer get the landowner debenture connections. That actually is in the development charge account for future capital of the system for growth, not replacement, growth. Much different. Before it would go into our wastewater reserve and increase the transfer at year end. If anyone has any questions on wastewater, we can answer them now. But I consider this a very inflationary budget. And I do applaud Ed's department on keeping this well controlled, seeing that this is truly a user rate paid impact. And I also remind council that we will have a wastewater and water rate study review coming up in the next couple quarters. So be prepared to see what the new rates will be and what the 5-year anticipated cost for our repairs will be.
Okay, anyone, any questions? Take us to Bay and Water then, please.
Same thing with Van Water, only represents a 10-month billing cycle. 2 months of billing cycles missed. Slight uptick in meters. Again, we don't have the water connection charge money anymore hitting this because of the DC. And then we still have some penalties and interest. Council also remember that we no longer get landowner debenture charges. That program has fell off the table in 21, so that program is nil and void now. Again, very much inflationary. It's a compliance-driven department, so it's regimented based on regs, provincial, and health and safety standards. But Ed and this department have done very well to keep it cost controlled. Biggest takeaway here is we have runaway costs both in the primary and the secondary costs. So when you guys come back and see the rates study this summer, tailwind's going to be is the current cube we're buying is unattainable to the current cubes we're billing. That'll be the big headwind when you guys see that when the new rate study comes out from Watson's. So I leave that as a caveat because that is the big runaway in the water department. As for that, the most important one is, are we hitting our transfer? In the last couple of years, we have struggled to hit our transfer. We went from averaging 1 year a deficit of 9,000 to as high as 160, and we're anticipating a 41,000 transfer this year. So we have pressure to make sure we maintain those transfers. But again, we are at the end of the 5-year water rate study. So with all the inflationary pressures, sometimes when you do a rate study model, you hear a little touch off on the inflationary approach, or inflation runs higher, or you have some materials that are not considered inflation, they're more like non-price index. They can push pressure. But I mean, our biggest takeaway is the cost of buying from the primary and secondary. And those are our 2 runaway costs. And that is the cube we buy. So as we improve the system, leakage, loss, prevention actually improves the profitability of the system.
Lauren, is the expectation for the secondary water system costs realistic, given the fact that 22, we look at those costs, 21 actuals?
So
Are
what?
you attributing this to the service line replacement in Vienna to reduce those costs? What's
So we're anticipating that the service line improvements will actually save about 8 to 12% of loss.
all right?
So that's the first one. We're also seeing a fair amount of conservatism in the BAM system. So we've been seeing users actually buy less. And people have been more apprehensive and more responsive when it comes to leak prevention. When people see it, they want to deal with it, so that way they're not billed. So it's been a lot more, people have been conscious on how many cubes they've been procuring. So it's more like to reflect. These reflect what we anticipate to buy, but if we're buying more, then we're billing more, but that's the difference is the spread. It's what we're billing versus what we're buying is where the main culprit is. Our billing rate increases haven't matched the primary and secondary rate increases. And I suspect when we do our rate study, that'll be a direct correlation.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Any questions? Moving on.
Moving to the Richmond water system, again, represents 5 out of 6 billing cycles, 2 months missing because of the timing of billing. Again, compliance, very tight. And it's been relatively well received in what it's done for transfers. So the last 3 years, actual anywhere between 33 to 52, and we're anticipating about 27. Basically, the big cost here comes down to water quality management and source water protection. And depending how those cost compliance go, can really be the main drivers on some of the cost outliers in the year. But that system has been very good since we've implemented it. And there's higher consumption in the Richmond system per household than there is in the BAM system.
All right, thank you. Unless there are questions?
Moving on to the waste management side. So we have 1 more year of one-time Ripper grants. We'll get 1 quarter. We have a little bit of remaining MRF grants to get, and then we have some bag tag sales and large pickup. The large pickup is basically the cost recovery of doing the big curb for the 2 programs. That'll cover advertising, that'll be covered in there. And then we also have the waste disposal. And then we have the public space recycling outdoors. As you'll know, we no longer pay for recycling, it's paid by the producers. There is some options in 2024 and 2025 for council to consider. If they ever want to get to cost recovery or full costing cycle, but that could be at the direction of council.
Lauren, can you remind me, regarding the large item pickup? Like, I support the program. I think it's a wonderful thing to have. Cost recovery rather than the $25, is it in the $45 range?
It's about 38.
$38.
It all depends if a pickup is missed,
Mhm.
then if we have to go out and do that special pickup, or we have to do it, then obviously that can be double to triple the cost. We had a couple of situations where the pickup was missed, so we
Right.
honored that, but generally it's in that range.
I think you gotta treat them as anomalies, but basically, so $38, you know, maybe something later on for this council to consider for moving for 25. A full cost recovery on that. It's still a relatively inexpensive service, ask our residents, hired private contractors to come in and move stuff. It's a lot more expensive.
There's also other costs to consider to your worship and council, like how many legal dumpings are we saving versus that staff time to clean up those legal dumpings.
Right.
We can't really measure that, but it is intrinsically hidden in cost in other departments, so it might not be 38, it might be more closer to like 32, 35, because we're saving some of the legal dumpings that are not happening.
Wow, point is, we're not that far off if we're charging 25 now. Something for consideration in the future. Might as well put the monkey out there now, like we're set for 24, but for 25. Council might want to consider moving into the realm of bag tag fees. Just saying, it's one of those items.
It's an item that council would consider if they want to move waste management to a full cost recovery. What that would look like, that would look like an annual charge for each property. It would be either administered when they pick up their tags or be administered in their interim or their final taxes as a miscellaneous or service charge. Our neighboring municipality implemented that charge years ago. It can be done. It would alleviate staff time, and I will make this. There's a fair amount of staff time, both in the fall and the first couple of weeks of January, handing out tags and not administration. So if we are able to save time or find, labor units that we could be employed otherwise, there is also those costs intrinsically too.
Yes, Councilor Probst.
What is the nominal value of that? The number?
in staff time.
Yeah, no, and selling the bag tags instead of giving them out.
So instead of giving out 52, we would charge residents probably a flat $100 to $110 per roll number for their tags. And they'd be added to each bill. So instead of paying the administration charge, they could either have it billed or they can come in and buy the tags à la carte. But that council can consider how they want to implement. You can go with a flat charge on the bill, or you can go by consumption at the counter. But that would bring it to cost recovery. If you think about how many tags you're giving out to each house, farm, such a year.
And that's the whole waste disposal line, like 365,000.
Yes.
What would we do with the people that have their own dumpsters? For me, for example, I cost the municipality zero right now.
You would no longer be paying it through your taxes, it would be moved off the tax levy.
Well, that's if you chose that route,
Right.
or fund rather than coming in à la carte. So again, this is something I think it's worth bringing forward for a future discussion. Council, just, perhaps I shouldn't have distracted you by putting it out there. But I think it's something that we need to consider for 25. We already have the tags out there for 24 is what I'm saying. Okay, Councilor Chilcott.
Thank you. Just to clarify for what Councilor Emerson was saying, for people that use the bins,
Mhm.
they would just come in and buy tickets as they needed them, correct? Because you still need to have a tag on every garbage bag. Is that correct?
Now, if it's in their own bin,
If you have your
No,
own
no, I mean,
personal bin,
for regular, everybody that puts their garbage out to the road every week, they must have a tag on their bag.
Yeah.
But if Councilor Emerson removes it from his taxes, and then at the end of the year, say he doesn't have a bin, he just wants to get a few tags, he can do that.
I would assume that'd be available.
he'd buy based on the
But that's
usage he needs.
It's not, I'm looking out for myself. It's that there is people with dumpsters
Yeah.
that
There are.
you have to.
Just using you as
exempt.
an example.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, please, again, but we're getting a little off track here. I was just bringing it up, put it on the radar for discussion in the future. Thomas, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's pretty much what I was going to say is that there are a few different ways this can be rolled out, and this forum probably isn't the one to discuss this in a comprehensive manner. It should be brought forward through an additional staff report, and I suspect that's going to be coming forward second quarter or third quarter of this year for more comprehensive discussion, but it has to be discussed more in depth internally first, so we can sort of suss out what those options might be for council's consideration. We just wanted to bring it forward as a high level that for the 2025 operating budget, it might be something that council wishes to consider closer to that time.
So anything pertaining to the 24 then budget for waste management? Any more questions? Deputy Mayor.
Yes, thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. Just the public space recycling. Have we added recycling bins? I see I think we're trying to get it closer to actuals, which is why you see the increase, but well, then again, sorry, 22 is, or 21 is about the same, so that's fair. I
Yeah.
just noticed the budget versus 24 budget there's quite a significant difference there. The 23 budget.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, this is another one of those line items similar to the vehicle maintenance line in Public Works where, you know, with multiple years of actuals over and above what is budgeted, it merited a revision, and 24,000 ultimately may be a bit of a high estimate. But either way, $8,500 as previously budgeted is far too low given, you know, the trend in actuals. So
Right.
this line merited increase.
Question or good? No? Okay. Additional questions?
Moving on to cemeteries. Sundry relates to any rates, fees, or services for the cemeteries the municipality runs internally. Grounds maintenance relates to the cemeteries that we maintain that do not have a care and maintenance board or bank account. And then obviously we have our sundry expense. One item that was missed in the addendum was a request from the joint cemetery boards. They had asked to have their interest guarantee provided. I think the amount, Madam Clerk, was 6 or 6.25.
I believe it was 6.
And that was from the last joint cemetery board meeting. They had that as a request for this. I do apologize if it was missed, but I did recognize it and went through the sundry line. That impact to the budget is about $1,200.
Okay,
And that's just an interest guarantee on the care and maintenance funds for each of the boards. And generally, the care and maintenance interest helps them pay for grounds maintenance, trees, stop removing, and other expense for the long-term protection of the cemeteries. And that was a request from the JC board back in the fall.
all right, thank you for that. Any questions?
All right. Moving on to municipal assistance. We have our standard 7,000 set up. Year to date, we had 5,300. This is the line where council can use to add cash donations or procurement of materials for any events. But this is what our municipal grant stipend is for the year, it's 7,000.
Any questions? Counselor Chilcott, thank you.
Thank you. I wrote a list of the grants that we gave out last year for municipal assistance for the festivals and that. And I wondered if 7,000 was going to cover them all, because we had some come in at the end that we had to approve later. I can't find my list.
Lauren, can you give us a summary of the festivals we did support? Seemed to me typically we would support the 3 festivals.
Oh, sorry, I found it. I had the Legion parades, the Edison Fest, Watermelon Fest, Periscope Playhouse requested something, I can't remember what it was. SHF parades and Beach Fest also. We not give them all money last year?
So we
No.
might have given them in-kind
In
services
kind.
or pylons
Yeah.
or beach stuff or if we were providing safety for parade route, we'd offer public works time. Obviously, that is cost of the municipal,
It does cost money.
but as for cash, and I think there's only 3 we give a physical grant check out to.
That's my understanding. I don't recall, I thought it was typically $2,000 each festival, but I don't recall if that's the case this past year.
Mm.
Nikki,
This past year was a little bit all over the place with requests, so it wasn't all at one time. So there was different amounts to different people based on where we were at. And I am in contact with the groups to let them know that we are looking at a new policy for council to consider in Q1 of 24 for this process. And the request online form, you could call it, if you do budget this amount, will be a little bit more straightforward for requests to come in.
all right. Okay. Any additional questions or on municipal assistance? It's not a great line. It really is. Meaning it's not huge.
All right, moving on, your worship. Parks. So grant subsidies has to do with the YCW or the CSJ for the grant for the public works student that supports the parks. And then obviously the wage for the students. We have the base driver here is grounds maintenance, which incorporates grass cutting and portion of Jimmy John's. That represents the new contracted rates for both.
Yes, please, Counselor Pros.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Grounds and maintenance, so that's Jimmy John's. Same amount of Jimmy John's are gonna cost us $20,000 more.
So I think is where our treasurer was working towards here. If you go back a couple years, you'll see when we updated our grass cutting contract, we had a severe price increase and it wasn't fully adjusted within the budget. So this year, at 18 cuts and 14 Jimmy Johns, this is what our contracted costs are.
47,000.
It actually should be a little bit more than that. But yes, that's at with no additional cuts. So generally in the past, we would do a minimum of 22 cuts. Cemeteries are different. And the contract cost for the cemeteries and the parks was actually $89,000. So the portion of the parks for in this should come out to close to 53,000. So where we tried to cut is on if it doesn't need it, they were told not to do it. It's stated in the contract what has to be done. It's a 10-day cut or 4-inch minimum. So, and the Jimmy Johns, yes, that is the contract price.
14 grand.
$189 per unit per week. Pretty much $3,000 a month. That's what it costs us for Jimmy John's.
If I may, Mr. Mayor. So just an FYI, I know that there's a London company that bought out all the local Jimmy John guys and seem to have a monopoly on the industry, hence probably the pricing, except for there's a local Bayham guy who's just getting into the business. Maybe something for us to look into.
There's an alternative. That's good to know.
Yes, through your worship, I was actually in contact with company Counselor Froze is referring to that did buy out our contract, looking at our contract agreement with them. There's many updates which would warrant opening the contract up and possibly re-evaluating our costing. So staff will be bringing forward something possibly just to open the contract and re-tender. Obviously, we still have to go to tender for it or RFP, however, that should happen. Thank you for that info.
That is good to know. Thank you for that. Yes.
It's a lot of money per dump.
That'll be the sound.
Okay, thank you for that. Yes, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just asking the hypothetical question. Has there ever historically been any type of grant opportunity for cemeteries? Anything to do with ground maintenance for cemeteries or?
Through your worship, Deputy Mayor. Generally, the first rule is if the cemetery has a bank account, no. If the cemetery has care and maintenance, no. If the third rule is if the cemetery doesn't have either three, they beg, plead, or ask for the municipality or the local people to take care of it or donate money.
Okay.
Generally, only time you will see any grants from the province of Breedman has to do to either special circumstances. But you also remember years ago, we implemented the columbarium. And Strathfield did that and they paid that full bore. There was no special one-time grants for bringing in, these niches. So there is no avenues for that. There is grants if ever a student company ever wanted to cut cemeteries for grass and start up a business, they can get grant money. But we can't get grant money that would impact that. That'd be the only way we could ever have grants that would impact our cemeteries. I'm not saying any student has summer plans to cut grass up there.
Mhm. Yeah. Supplementary, just a comment. I just find it's unfortunate. Just because it's a level of service that I think is important to the residents that are visiting their loved ones, and sometimes it does look a little rough and it's unfortunate.
But I will say this, Deputy Mayor, through your worship. All the active boards are more fearful of losing care and maintenance money than the beautification of the cemetery. Because once that care and maintenance funds are gone, they 100% become the levy. And then that is at the discretion of the council on how they want to cut it. So they've been advantageous in trying to do the minimum when it comes to it. And yes, I'm well aware of the complaints. We had a conversation at our last JCB meeting about it, which is in the correspondent notes. But the consensus from all the boards that have boards is we want to do the minimum because we need to protect the investment for the long term of the well-being in cemeteries.
Thank you for that.
Moving on.
Strathfield Community Center, we're anticipating some rentals because of the current ICIP grant timeline. So that's new for rental revenue. Basically, the big takeaway is the building here struggles for maintenance. We have maintenance issues with the doors upstairs. We have to eventually deal with the HVAC and the heating as well. So that'll either come back when we have the ICIP status come back, or council have to consider options to deal with those. Those maintenance have been burdensome the last couple of years. As for that, it's been very much status quo. Utilities is based on a square footage, percentage, and split between the upstairs office and the downstairs. And that's been the same methodology since the first day we moved in 2017.
All right, the utilities for the office are showing up in the general government.
That is correct, your worship.
Thank you.
And any cleaning cost shows up in the building maintenance line as well.
Upstairs, like for the office in the general government. Sorry.
Yes,
Yeah.
we split them out.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor, you have
Yeah.
your hand up?
Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. Just a comment on that utility line, just because I question those utilities seem awfully high for the fact that the hall, even though there's a large square footage there, it's not used as much as the rest of the property.
Through the mayor, deputy mayor. Doesn't matter whether the doors are open or the lights are on, room's still gotta be warm. It gets heated on the building on the basis as well as cooled. So it picks up whatever its share portion of square footage. So if there has to be staff upstairs and there's nobody downstairs in the hall, you still have to keep the pipes warm or the building cool. So you're still gonna have those utilities. So the hydro consumption, our wastewater consumption here that we have of charge, which gets billed back, that's just shared. So we treat it as a square footage, not based on the lights are on or if it's dark.
Councilor Chilcott.
Thank you. To add to that, you mentioned the water and everything. It gets used from the upstairs 5 days a week, usually, and 1 or 2 days downstairs, and nothing down here, the rest of the week. So the water doesn't really work out to even. And then I was wondering about the building maintenance. That's for the upstairs as in the hall, or upstairs as in the offices?
Building maintenance covers from you first walk through the doors. If the building maintenance relates to the doors during office, we consider them to be general. If they're considered part of the hall, they get dealt with. If they're the hall doors, they're part of the hall, that's the hall expense. If it's the HVAC or heat, goes into the hall. If it has to relate to the shared bathrooms, it gets split.
So all of these are split to the appropriate.
The methodology has not changed since 17. So if there's this perception that there's a higher percentage of utilities and maintenance down here, it's the same calculation and same methodology. The first day.
Which was argued back then as well.
Which was the methodology that council accepted and approved in 17 when we moved in here.
Okay.
So nothing's really changed on that.
I'm just trying to get to the point. Okay. The SCC gets shown as costing so much money to run. But I just want to make sure that the numbers that are being used to say this is how much it runs and then it loses this much money every year are accurate and or as close to accurate as they can be. And I've been asked about it by a few people. And so I just want to make sure that it's clear that costs are being split and they're being split on a square footage basis Or when it comes to maintenance, it's being allocated to the portion that it needs to go to?
When the invoices come in, we identify which to go. If they're for the general government, then they relate to the reflection of supporting the upstairs corporate services office, they get billed to that department. If they relate to incidents or events or need for the hall, they're billed accordingly there.
Thank you.
The treatment is unbiased and been the same methodology for the last 7 years.
Thank you. Appreciate your clarification.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you for that, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. Just a comment or just a question, Lauren, for if you could just, in your opinion, would it be worthwhile to revisit that methodology? Or do you think it's an accurate depiction of distribution of those utilities? Or should it be something that we revisit?
Through the mayor, deputy mayor, I actually think it's a moot point. I think you're moving
Okay.
$4 to one line to the other. You're still gonna be paying $8, whether you pay $5 here or $3 there. If the hall stays empty for the year, 95% of those expenses are still gonna be on the board. Whatever little bit of lights come on, yes, you have that. But if it sits vacant because you can't get any rentals, that's still the cost of maintaining that space. And if we were a one-story office, we would have lower overhead, but we have to push stuff upstairs for the heat. And we have also deal with the summer when it's warmer upstairs. And we have to deal with equipment that is aged out. So when the ICIP grant comes back and council it before, you guys have to make a decision on a number of things in that hall,
Mhm.
irrespective of the grant. Because that maintenance is constantly ballooning. We have service calls constantly because of the door issues. These are coming to roost, whether the hall is used 5 days a week, 10 days a week, or there's little traffic in the office, or there's tons of traffic. They're coming.
Mhm.
Is maintaining your existing envelope of facilities. We're in that 5 to 6 year since we've done here, it's coming up.
Okay, anything further on the hall? Moving on then.
Libraries, we receive lease revenues from the county. It is correlated to the October CPI and indexed accordingly. Pretty standard across the board. We're anticipating a library transfer right around 33,000. As you noticed in the past, we've averaged between 30 and 50,000. Again, biggest thing that comes out of there is how frequency of our cleaning. So we've changed the cleaning. And just to remind council, we have brought all the buildings of BAM here, Public Works, wastewater, water, library, fire, back to pre-pandemic cleaning. That became effective November the 1st. We went from having average billing of $9,500 a month to $3,200 a month. So we are turning it back to pre-pandemic. And I have asked for department heads as well as the CAO to bring any lines back to pre-pandemic now that we're out of this phase. So I want council to understand that yes, they might look high for 23, we're bringing them down to reflect where they need to be in relation to pre-pandemic. Biggest takeaway for the library is there was a bit higher building maintenance in years past. It is coming down. But we did put an elevator and we've had a bit higher maintenance in certain aspects. If you want to get into the maintenance of that, I can leave that for Steve because he knows the maintenance file on that building a lot better than I do.
Buildings.
It's buildings again, yes. Buildings needs expense. Buildings need care. Sometimes they need love. Sometimes they need a new color of paint.
Any questions on the libraries? All right, moving on.
Museums. Grants and subsidies reflect the CSJ or the YCW. Generally, we take two approaches. We try to get 2 students in public works on the CSJ. We try to get 1 to 3 students on the YCW for museums. In years past, we've been successful. We've got up to 3. 1 year we got accept up to 5. We could use 5, but it was nice. This past year we had 1. Staff are hopeful we can get 2. We're going to start the process tomorrow, Deputy Clerk and I, on the CSJ, and then we're going to work our way through the YCW. And if there's any other programs like Young Experience or any other the SEP experience, they come on, we're going to apply for them and go accordingly. Obviously, we have our mission because we're open, children's program, small stuff. Wages, reflects the two students as well as the curator. One item of consideration, we do not have the request from motion of above. It is not included in this budget. My suggestion would be is, if council wants to go for that initiative and not have it as a budget item, and that was the boat,
Moving the boat.
moving the boat in. My suggestion would be is, people want to donate cash for it, we can write CRA receipts, or if they're able to provide in-kind donated service of labor or materials, we'd gladly accept it and provide them a fair market value receipt for that. But we have not included it. We have tried to be as lean as possible here, and that was an ask, not a need.
Lauren, this is getting down to a timing issue. We do have an accessibility grant for the museum, which needs to be expended this year. And I assume that moving of that boat was to correspond with moving or with that remodeling in the museum for the accessibility washrooms, right?
Yes.
So are you going to get donations in time to facilitate that move of that boat?
Deputy clerks.
I'm just asking. I'm trying to be realistic here, and I appreciate what staff are telling, me, but
If I may, your worship. So originally, yes, discussion was around trying to time both activities at once. Is it physically possible? Maybe not, because the construction may be too expansive inside the museum in order to have this other activity, moving the boat in at the same time. They might collide as far as space allowances and just activity going on.
Right.
Ideally, it'd be great to get the boat in first. Get it in, get it placed, deal with it, and then the accessibility construction could take place. Or vice versa. Construction for the accessibility and then bring the lifeboat in later. But to have the two going on at the same time, it might not physically work.
okay, that's fair enough. That's fine. Would it be possible to move that boat in after you do the accessible washrooms? There's a room to get it. That's what I'm asking about. Is there a timing issue component here? Is it gonna interfere with the whole concept of trying to raise a donation? So take the vote.
Through your worship, I have not seen our final plan for the accessibility
Okay.
construction that's still being worked on. I don't know the exact dimensions of the finished washroom
Right.
construction. Our thought is that there will be room to navigate this lifeboat in and around using the large overhead door at the north end
That's
to bring it in. All the curator has already removed the temporary wall and has all that open space right now in anticipation of moving the lifeboat. So timing, again, I don't know, again, haven't seen our final design. So we'll leave it at that.
Thomas.
Just a quick point to follow, Mark's comments. In discussion with Steve, it sounds like what we'll be able to do with the washroom and the entrance is the entrance will be altered, but the location won't change. The existing washroom will likely expand kind of along that eastern wall, but it won't expand further into the space. So it's not going to impact the degree to which we can use that sliding door on the north side to bring the boat in if that is something that ultimately occurs. I suspect that, you know, our timeline on this is if we have final plans that the engineer is working on in Q1, we're probably tendering for work in Q2, and the works probably start late Q3. So I don't anticipate there to be much impact to the operating season for the museum, and the works can likely be done off season closer to the end of the year. Given that, the boat could be moved in and around the same time, which gives us a little bit more time to raise any donations should they come in. So for council's information.
Councilor Chilcott.
Thank you. Do we have a cost of what it would take to move the boat in, and what does it take to move the boat in? it a crane? Is it putting it on a wagon? Does anyone know?
That's a very good question. I have no idea.
That's
Perhaps.
an excellent question, and your worship, we're still working on that. The curator is diligently trying to find ways and means to get that lifeboat moved into the museum. She has provided some preliminary information to staff to say that there may have to be a boat trailer involved. There will have to be a dolly of some configuration involved. The boat has to be put onto something and moved across the parking lot to that north end door, backed in, pulled in, however it needs to get in, and then probably moved on to something else to move it in the museum itself. So we're still working on that. Now, timing wise, it'd be nice to do it sooner than later because she has all the area cleared out and ready to go if we can do this. However, the construction, I don't want to see that in July and August because that's not going to work. So ideally it should be, day after Labor Day, after we close the museum. That would be the ideal time to start the construction. But I sincerely, and I know the curator too, would like to see the boat in long before that so that she can put things back to where they were before. So there's still some work to be done and to figure out exactly how to do this. And yes, a crane may be necessary. We just don't have the full details yet. Costing, she's talking about dollies. She had pricing from a marina. Using 2 dollies, there's $555 each.
Is that rental,
Then, pardon?
to rent or purchase?
That is for purchasing dollies.
They're going to sit on these dollies?
That would be the ultimate, is that the boat would remain on the dolly in the museum. That would be part of the way to display it.
Okay.
So you can't put the boat on the floor. You have to put it on a cradle or a dolly or some sort of structure that will make it displayable, right? And that it's not tipping, it's not moving, it's stationary. So that's the idea. And then she was talking or mentioned in her notes about a boat trailer. Again, if we can beg or borrow or get someone with the equipment to donate their time and materials, ideally, that would be great. We don't want to get into buying a boat trailer because what do we need a boat trailer for
What,
after the fact?
what does it weigh? Can't you just pick it up with a good motor tractor? Get with straps.
I'm just wondering.
Good question, but I don't have the answer for that.
I agree with you, but
I can come over next week and we can bring some canvas straps and move. I've moved buildings before.
I
It's
guess
not
the
that-
point, your worship, is that it is an undertaking.
yes.
It is an artifact. It's an artifact that I think we would want to see kept. It is deteriorating. We all know that. To get it inside, we'll preserve it. So again, it's a council decision to decide if this is what you want to do now or we're going to do it later. But I just wanted to make you aware that the curator is trying to do things right now to get this kind of set up and ready to go as we can decide to do it.
So not on the budget, not included, but you're talking a potential cost of upwards of $1,500.
Potentially.
$3,000? Why $3,000?
That was the first best. That was the first
Yeah.
estimate that Mark gave me back.
Yeah.
December.
Right.
3,500.
3 to 35. Again, like I said in the beginning, Jennifer is still working on the logistics of it all and really what it would cost us. But the dollies are one option, trailers another option. If we get someone to donate, even better.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you for that. And that's not included.
No. Because it was an ask, not a want.
Thank you. Ask, not a need.
That's correct.
All right, thank you. Okay. Anything else under the museum's budget? Yeah, okay. Good night,
Mhm.
chief. Yes, Deputy Mayor.
Yes, thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. Just one quick question then. Since we have not included it in the budget, I just want, just for process purposes, it's not included in the budget, but we're still expecting information. So that information comes back to council in the form of a report, and then would there be funding in the reserves in the event that we approve that expense? Or is that not a consideration for? Is that not the purpose of the reserves? I'm just double checking so that I understand the process.
Through the mayor to deputy mayor, the museum reserve is actually being used for the EA portion. So that reserve is already committed to the portion for the EA accessibility. Staff can bring back a report once we have plans and costing. But my professional request would be, or recommendation would be, is if it's something that the community wants for the betterment of the museum, let's see if we can find donations, time, service, labor, or goodwill of the community to make it happen. But staff looked at it as a ask for 3,500 and see if we can find an initiative in the community to do this for the museum. Seeing that we're already putting a portion of the levy for the upgrade for the EA.
Okay,
Yeah, supplementary, just a question.
Mhm.
That's great. And I 100% support that, but how does that information get to the public? Aside from this meeting today? How do we, like, is there somewhere we can identify that through the museum website or through our website? Like, I'm just curious how, who spearheads that and how do we get that going?
I'll do generic, and with the deputy clerk or the CEO want to chime in. It could be initiative that we put in our February tax newsletter of happenings at the museum. Get involved. We could have it come back as a staff report. We could put a campaign. Roll the boat in.
No.
Roll the boat in.
Yeah, 100%. No,
Maybe it's an initiative that we can work with the community and some of our volunteer firefighters, and we find community businesses or volunteers to me that want to make it happen.
Mhm.
But we are trying as diligently as we
Right.
can to keep the levy controllable. And that's why it was not put in the budget.
Gotcha. Thank you through you. So does that direction have to come from council or is that something that staff will initiate? I'm just curious.
I would respectfully say we come back with the staff report once we know what the costings and options. And then staff present some initiatives, if we're gonna have a row the boat campaign or whatever the initiatives. And that's our kickoff for the museum for the year. Or we put a special donation thing in the bucket, but I'll leave that to the CEO and the deputy clerk to talk about their rollout and marketing.
Lauren, as you mentioned, the reserve for the museum has been committed toward the accessible washroom.
Correct.
One
And the
hundred percent.
balance, yes, and the balance is also being picked up by the levy.
Mm.
So there's three components, the levy, the reserve, and the grant. And that was that
Well-
one-time museum grant that we got a few years back.
Well, just to clarify that, the grant that we're getting covers the entire levy portion.
Not the additional overage that we're anticipating.
That's coming from another reserve. We have that noted in the budget, so there is no levy impact. But further to the treasurer's comment, yes, once we have an idea of what the options for moving the lifeboat are and some actual costing that we can bring to council rather than high level estimates. We can bring it forward as a staff report and council can direct as they please at that time. If council wants to move forward with it, but is seeking donation or some form of in-kind service, then we have new communication methods through our website that we can use as well. We also still have Voyant that we are using, so we can push it out in a number of different ways to the residents, should council direct.
Okay? Look at your email. Any other questions?
We don't have the expenses for that, so we can't include them.
Fair enough, good enough. Anything else? Any questions regarding the museum budget? Shall we move on? Getting close to the end. Development services.
Okay. Reflects the current planning rates and fees. The council passed in 23 and the 24 revenue lines. Basically reflects the increasing consulting fees of the new consultant, as well as any additional fees related to Lake Shoreline. It's a pretty standard budget for planning services. So, any questions, please direct.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Once again, this is tied to our deal with Malahide, and that's a
No,
21%.
it is
No,
No, it's a failure to hire someone.
No, this is not tied to the building services. This one is dealing with planning services.
Yeah, weren't we supposed to hire someone joint with them?
We didn't get one. And so if you look at the consulting line, consulting fees.
Yeah,
That's the cost for Arcadis.
I know, I understand that, but that's a failure in that deal. So somehow that's a good deal, but they didn't provide the people necessary to recoup some savings on. I really think we need to revisit that whole planning thing, because that's cost us money too, because we didn't get to do the same thing as the building service.
What we are doing at the county level is exploring the possibility of centralized planning. We couldn't get a planner at the for the Bay of Malahide model. County is looking at centralized planning. The idea being to develop synergies that could be used across all 7 municipal partners at the county level. Thereby, hopefully, the cost to the local municipal partner, us, lower than consulting.
Respectfully, I understand that, but in here, there's 21%. Like, we justify all this stuff, but if I go through it, -12 plus 21 plus 50,
Yeah.
it doesn't look like a good deal. I could not say, because it was on them to hire the person, but they couldn't find anyone.
Just a
So
quick,
the deal is like not a good deal.
just a quick point. This has already come to council. Council has received correspondence from the Township of Malahide to permit their withdrawal from the planning component of the service because we weren't able to hire a joint director. This development services budget has zero to do with Malahide. This is BAM only. This is a continuation of the existing service provided through the municipality by internal staff and by the consultant that we have been using for the better part of the last 25 years.
I understand what you're saying, but respectfully, that when we made this deal, that was included in it, and it's not part of the component, so I think you need to revisit it. I like it. I understand what you guys are saying, but I don't agree with it. It's like I made a deal with you, and they said, hey, I'm gonna buy 5 cows off you, and I'm gonna give you the calves back, and I lost the calves. Right, so I'm sorry, but you bought the 5 cows, but I don't get to give you the calves back.
The impression. It was expected under the shared servicing model from a building services point of view. that we would be able to share a planner at much cheaper cost than we're currently paying for our contract services. That was the intention. It didn't come to fruition. So we proceeded forward on the two services that we could. What I'm trying to suggest to you is that we are not done. We're exploring options at the county level.
Yeah, I
Provide
get
the
that.
same planning service and perhaps even trying to step back from the consulting side. But it's costly, and we're not the only municipality across Torrey and Elgin that is experiencing cost escalation due to having to external planning services. That's what we're trying to do. It's hard to find them. You can't find planners. Because they get paid better during, from an external private system. Counselor Choe.
Thank you. So the three positions were not dependent on each other.
No.
For getting. So it wasn't a matter of if we got all three of them, we'd save X number of dollars. We saved so much money on each individual position. Is that correct?
Theoretically, from a bill, let's call, I'd like to call it building services, but let's call it, CBOs. A building inspector point of view, we only pay for the time they are on station here. Right?
Correct.
Likewise, Malahide only pays for bylaw enforcement the time that bylaw is on station there.
Correct, but one position was not contingent on the other in
No.
order for us to save money.
No,
Okay, that's
That
what I
was
wanted
the
to clarify.
Just to clarify that we're all focusing here on dollars and cents, and I understand that because it's the budget. However, the intent of shared service was a combination of saving costs and or increasing level of service. Increasing level of service may come with a higher cost, as we are seeing in bylaw. However, that can be substantiated by the improved statistics that we have seen over the course of the last 6 months. One service is not contingent on the other, and we are currently in a reciprocal relationship with Malahide where they provide us with one service, we provide them with one service. And by all estimations from Malahide and the feedback I'm getting is that things are working out quite well in that regard for bylaw. But once more, there will be a report coming to council on this in the next month.
please,
Since-
Counselor Bros.
Since we're on the topic, I do happen to agree with Councillor Emerson. The building, however, from Bayham has been an absolute catastrophe, the building inspector and building permits. And I know it's not part of the budget, I know,
Hold on,
but it's been an absolute catastrophe.
I wouldn't, this isn't the time or the place for those kinds of comments, Counselor Bros. I don't believe that's to be true either. I'm looking actually for, what page item was the building services? What I wanted to know is.
Probably 23 in yours, Mr. Mayor.
All right, what I wanted to know is where did DC show up?
Development charges?
Yep.
Development charges are not included in the operating budget. They go directly into the respective reserves.
Yeah, they no longer hit, through the mayor, they no longer hit operating. They only come into revenue when we procure capital
fair
that
enough.
relates to long-term.
So essentially, what we've done though, is we've removed a revenue stream out of our budgets, correct? Because we don't have connection fees.
Correct.
Correct. So, because we've moved to a DC system, they no longer show up in your revenue stream.
Only on the water and the wastewater side.
All right,
We do not have a homogeneous DC yet.
I
Still
don't-
working through that.
please.
Can I just ask a question? Where's the time and place to ask those kind of questions then? Let's just clarify that because I do have more.
I would almost suggest that you have a private conversation with the CAO on this one.
Yes, absolutely. I won't have unsubstantiated comments bashing staff in open session. If you have any concerns about the service being provided, I respectfully ask that discussion had behind closed doors. Thanks.
All right, returning back to your development services specific to this budget, questions? Got about 4 pages to go. I'll take a break. The incentive is get these pages done.
Okay,
It'd be easier to do the pages, then we can come back and
for comment,
comment
Yes.
and
Yeah.
come back in direction.
thank
Any-
you.
Any questions specific at this point for development services?
Develop-
The anticipation on your development services that you expect lower activity in 24. Is that way you're reading it, Mark? That's a cost driver as well as a revenue driver.
Through your worship, I would see potentially there could be less just because of what's out there in the economy and the
Right.
way things, building permits are down and everything is kind of down. However, we did put our fees up.
Yeah.
So the applications that we do get in, we will be collecting more fees, and the fees are more reflective of the actual cost of processing those applications.
Yes.
And I will let you know that I already have 7 applications right now.
Wow.
So you're
So-
still projecting lower activity?
Not for the month of January, but,
Well,
Wow.
then you may want to revise.
but I,
But anyway,
but
I
I,
respect your number.
it might slow just because these applications came in December.
Right.
Price increase was January 1st.
Thank you. Can we move on?
Ready to move to tourism? All right, tourism. Revenue line reflects to the beach lease. Salaries reflects to the time of public works. Biggest one here is beach maintenance. That is the cost for blue flag, combing and raking. 25 to 38. You notice that we're already trending close to 38 right now.
You said blue flag, raking and what?
And
You said combing?
Coleman.
combing,
How about grooming?
grooming.
Okay, sorry, I just,
Through you, your worship, just to clarify that line, our beach contract is for just over $25,000. That was the new contract last year or this year that came in effect midway through the thing, which the old contract was actually higher than the new contract. So next year, 25,000 is the contracted price for cleaning the washrooms and emptying the garbage bins at the beach.
yes,
So the rest of the is safety devices at the beach. Plumbing issues. So anything to do with call-ins on weekends, extra call-ins for the janitorial services at the beach. There were a few extra calls for random horrible reasons. So that's where those extra lines come into. The extra dollars to get us to that. And you'll see in the last 2-3 years, that's about, safety devices is the #1 driver there for the extra over the cleaning costs.
all right. Steve, while you're right there, beautification, that includes lights, banners.
Flower pots in Port Burwell account for $600 to $700 of that. Banners is the large part of that.
That's taking up and taking.
That's
up
right.
and down.
When we got that grant a few years ago, something we didn't really account for was replacement of banners. So I've been replacing at least 10 or 15 banners a year.
Wow.
I think
I have
moving,
one at home. Picked it up off the roof.
yeah, moving forward, I think just that general replacement every year is gonna replenish the banners as they go. So
You ever been approached by an individual wanting to buy one?
I have not.
What are they worth each? We'll talk.
Yep,
We'll talk.
135.
Okay, thank you. That's fine, because I've been approached. But anyway, yes, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. Under the beautification, just for clarification, we purchase do we purchase the flowers or is that just for watering?
That is not the watering cost. That's just out of our general student funding. To add on to that beautification, I also have to hire a bucket truck to put up Christmas lights. The stars, I have to hire any of the banner work that involves the brackets attaching to the poles. I have to bring in a special contractor for that as well. So, which would be the same with adding hanging baskets to poles around the municipality, along with repairs to the hydro on the poles. And this is regulated through TSSA on an annual inspection. So all those are the drivers for the beautification. I don't know if there's more on Marg's behalf in the tourism part of it with the Marine Museum in there, but that's the general number that's what it is.
So supplementary, then the salary and wages then reflects the cost of the students to
That's correct.
water. And does that, under that umbrella, that includes the donated hanging baskets that are in Vienna then? They water those ones as well?
Yes, there's additional 6 hanging baskets that are watered daily.
Any additional costs on this one or questions? Excuse me? Thank you. Drainage?
Grant represents the OMAFRA drainage grant for the superintendent, which is Steve. Wages just reflect his time and a little bit of statutory costs and a little bit of conference seminar costs, very minimal.
All right, the grant is dependent upon his time, as you say.
It's based on the amount of time he does for both maintenance, ratepayer time. It does not go towards capital time of any drain rehab or rebuild, only maintenance.
Say, when does that get billed out or paid?
That gets billed. So I do the paperwork right now for the back of previous fiscal year. So it goes
Alright.
based on, we carry the cost and then we bill OMAFRA.
All right, so looking at this, is there a suggestion that there's expecting or anticipating reduced activity in drainage?
I go based on what I anticipate on Steve's biweekly timesheet, and I kind of write that in.
Alright.
Generally, in the past, we would only average between 110 to 150 staff time.
All right, thank you. Any questions? Water sampling and testing?
Just,
What is-
that's just for that was just basically if we had to do any sort of erosion or sediment stuff.
All right, thank you.
The final sheet is just the capital summary. So this is the proposed revised capital adjustment that was in the staff report. So it brings the net capital levy down to 1,953,347. That included the capital budget amendment, which was adding the cistern, and also the recommendations of the 5 that were noted in the staff report. This is still an increase in capital budget from year over year. So if you look at 22, we go from 1.5, 1.6, 1.9. We do have challenges in 25 because the placeholder is 2.6.
Yeah.
And some of those lines are gonna have the final one-time transfer for Ojibwe, and it has multiple pieces of capital equipment that are already procured in contracts. So it's gonna, 25 is gonna require work too. Both in the capital side and operating side.
Okay, any questions on this? Okay. Thank you for that run through. Call for a 10-minute recess. Okay, all right. We are back. We left off with, essentially a review of the individual sheets of the budget. Now it's time for a fulsome discussion. I think I'll return council back to the original comments, submitted for the budget, the, addendums. And, back and ask the same question. Is there anything in those comments that anyone wants to bring forward for the budget? Are you comfortable going forward that we simply receive for information? Or anything you want to take action on? This is just a step in the process. Excuse me, Counselor Chilcott.
So just to clarify, this is just for the
The comments.
comments brought in and the addendum.
Comments received, including the correspondence from the SHF, Ms. Schultzhauser, and I probably pronounced that wrong. Go ahead and make fun of me, Val.
Yeah. Mhm.
And the motions from the Waterfront Advisory Committee and the Marine Museum. Again, any action does council members wish to take action on? Anything you want to include in the operating budget? Anything you simply want to receive?
Just a quick note, also their East Elgin Community Assistance Program, they're requesting, I believe, $3,000.
Okay. That's something as well, as part of that is part of those comments received, right? Yes. All right, so is that something that somebody wants to assign to your general assistance? You'd like to assign that to a general assistant, so okay, so the thinking then, Counselor Emerson, would be that you've got that total $7,000 and assign that portion to it, which leaves the remaining balance for festivals,
No, maybe half or something, or a portion,
a portion of it.
because we have to save the whatever normal 2,000 for each festival, because I'm pretty sure Beach Festival come on in that on timely manner.
Counselor Chilcott?
Thank you. Do we need? Three. I'm not sure where this goes, but we have to make cuts. Like, we still have to make more cuts, otherwise it's not gonna be affordable tax hike for anyone. So this is a good start, but we still need to remove more out of that budget in order for it to be affordable. So I don't think there's anything in these comments that we can afford to pay for at this time.
Thank you.
So in my opinion, there's nothing here. As much as I would like to give assistance to everyone, I don't think we can. I think we need to look at the entire population of BAM and make sure that they're all taken care of. They can pay their bills, they can have food on their table.
Appreciate your comments. So again, going back, what do you think? Goes back to what Counselor Emerson was looking for. He was looking to at least include the assistance request from East Elgin. You wish not to, or to?
So my thought is we might not be able to do the municipal assistance at all for anyone.
All right. So how do you want to close this one off?
I don't know how you close it off.
See for information.
Okay, receive for information.
That's
That's my thought.
Is that a motion to receive those comments for information?
Does he not already have one on the table?
No, he didn't make a motion.
Okay, then I would make a motion to receive for information.
So all the comments,
At this time, yes, we've already. There is the addendum that we deferred to the budget, but it's not an operating budget item. Correct? So what do we have to do with that?
so my, all the comments, the addendum, I grouped them all together. Unless
So to remove them, or, sorry. To receive them for information does just that. We do nothing with it, correct? At
Well,
this time. We can look at it later.
Direction, correct.
like, to be clear, are you saying you wanna take? Are you talking about all the information, or are you talking?
All
about
the
taking that
comments.
whole $7,000 and not giving anything for us?
That's what I'm talking about as we go through the budget, like, because we're not accepting the budget at this time, right? We're just looking at the comments that have come through. What everybody has written, that's what we're accepting for information, correct?
That's what I was recommend or suggest, but it's up to you. If you
Yeah, I'm
wanna
not-
keep
I'm
that
not
and keep the
Recommending
logic
we
of what
accept
we're doing.
the budget or we receive the budget for information, just the comments on the budget.
All right, that's clear, because it was two things
Sorry.
at once. No, so I apologize for not understanding.
That was me.
Okay. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor, and respectfully, we deferred some of these issues to this discussion and just to receive it for information, I don't think is fair. I do think that we need to address the fact that the budget is extremely lean. There really is no additional funding, yes, but there were some requests here that I think we need to have a discussion about. The lighthouse being one of them and the Stratfordville Hall being another. In terms of, is there a lighthouse reserve in this budget? I don't believe there is. So I'm just curious as to,
I would say respectfully, both those two items should come back in a staff report, one on status of both applications. If we're gonna have that as a funding or a budget or a levy discussion, council will be putting more money, creating more reserve money for those. That's really what those two requests are asking. A, establish the lighthouse reserve and fund it, and B, please deal with this for the hall. But again, both those two are still outstanding pending, but I will leave
Right.
that to the CAO.
okay,
But they also add to the levy. If you guys add more money into those, they add to the levy.
The one
Absolutely.
potentially adds to
Yeah.
that.
Just to follow the treasurer's comments, I expect that there's going to be a report within the next month, with further information on the lighthouse. This current operating budget does not include a further transfer to the lighthouse reserve. And that follows the correspondence from Ms. Schlotzauer, on the lighthouse. We don't have word yet on the rescoping, application for this building, but it is expected that when we figure out or hear what is ultimately decided, there will be a report coming back to council either way. So those have already been sort of allocated for in my docket for the year, once we have that pertinent information. But to the deputy mayor's comments, with respect to this budget as a draft, there is no lighthouse transfer involved. The lighthouse reserve net at this point in time is somewhere in the high 50,000s range, when you account for the overage in the facilities reserve.
Correct me if I'm wrong, through you, Mr. Mayor. Aren't those capital items anyway, the lighthouse and the Stratfordville Hall, except for transferring money from operating budget to reserves?
They were both referred to the operating budget for discussion. I think Thomas has outlined the one fairly easily. We have still no information on the status of a particular scoping project. We don't know where that grant is. I don't believe there is a levy impact of maintaining that particular project as is. We may decide at the end of the day not to do it. But at this point, I don't think there's an operating levy impact. So that's one issue. For the lighthouse, what we're suggesting is that there are no capital transfers in this particular budget to the reserve. It's again, something that there's more information that I think is still coming forth. If council wishes to make a transfer, you can, but you're already looking at well over 11%.
Yeah.
Is it something that we can deal with at this point? I don't think there's going to be any remedial efforts taking place before 2025. But that's just my opinion. That's up to council. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to follow your comments, the reason why it was referred to the operating budget was if council ultimately decided that a transfer to the Lighthouse Reserve would be something to be entertained, there would be a levy component to that. If council wished to move forward with any sort of works over and above what is currently allocated for in the Lighthouse Reserve, since other discretionary reserves are quite low at the moment, it would be expected that that work would also have a levy impact, which is why it is before you in the operating discussion.
We're back to whatever Sue wanted to do. I probably was leaving you there. Perhaps that was unfair.
No, I was just confused as well as that the two items.
What I was trying to
Were
do was
capital
move
items.
the comments. If there's
Right.
something there that you wish to operate or act on, this is the time. If there's nothing that you feel that is feasible to act on in this particular budget, then to do the proper thing is to at least receive it.
I think it still stands. I don't see where we have the money to go forward with any of these items as much as we may want to. So it's still reserved or received for information.
All right, so a motion, Deputy Mayor.
Yes, thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. Just one question you had alluded to earlier in that there would be in the event that nothing is done with the grant for the Stratfordville Hall this year, that there were some end of life items. Is that part, will that have to adjust because we're looking at like the HVAC, for example, and things like that, that may have to be addressed this year? How does that impact the budget as it stands?
I'll try to address this one before Lauren answers. So I think this feeds back to the design, the conceptual design, the working drawings that have been either approved or are in process with the architect on this file. And I'm going to reference the HVAC system specifically because in the expansion, the new HVAC system goes on the roof, whereas this one is a ground unit. So if we're looking at, if council decides, later this year to pull out components such as the HVAC system and do the HVAC system, that may impact the works in general because the ground system is not a roof system for HVAC purposes. So that's a consideration for council, but some aspects, if we don't move forward, can be pulled out, such as the accessible walking trail, for instance. That can be done through Parkland Reserve or Parks and Playground Reserve. So it depends on ultimately what council wants to do, but there are some moving parts of that to consider.
Not sure that answered your question.
So all through you, Mr. Mayor, just a final comment. All of the deferrals that we've made really is gonna be, it really hinges on reports coming back to council later in the year, once more information is available, and then we can make educated decisions on how that's gonna impact the budget moving forward.
Once we have information on where the scope reduction lies and whether it was approved or not, we'll have far more information to move forward upon. Until that time, we are in limbo unless council chooses at some juncture to not move forward with the project. And if council ultimately decides that at some point, then aspects of that project can be parsed out and done as standalone items, such as the HVAC, such as the accessible parking or the accessible walkway, such as the cistern.
Thank you. So just one supplementary. So we do have comments on file already from residents asking us to not move forward with the project. When would you, in your opinion, I'm just asking, when is an appropriate time for council to have that discussion? Because we've been in limbo for a long time and I think it's unfair. The residents want to know where we're at.
Yeah, I concur. We're pretty good at kicking the can down the road. At some
Right.
point, we have to pick a date to decide what.
If council ultimately wants to have that discussion, because it's technically on the agenda tonight via addendum, if council wants to have that discussion tonight, it can. We don't have the ISIP scope reduction information, but if council is wishing to discuss ceasing the project, then that is something that can be discussed tonight.
Well, through you, Mr. Mayor, I guess the question that was asked is like, when do you think that we'll get the appropriate information so that we can have a hard date to quit kicking the can down? I think that's the question. When's the appropriate time to pick for a hard date? We can't just keep deferring and doing stuff. We don't have the information right now to make a hard decision. When are we gonna have the information so we can say, hey, last meeting in February, first meeting in March, let's make a decision. Like, at least we can decide to decide.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to council, based upon when the scope reduction was originally applied for and the information that the treasurer and I have with respect to 3 to 6 month turnaround, the fact that they followed up in June and we responded in June, at the outside, I would have expected end of 2023, at the absolute outside. We've reached out to the MPP for any information that they can glean for us. No word yet. So I don't have an answer outside of that.
Okay. It goes back, and I appreciate the frustration around council. I would rather have the information from the grant approval authorities before we decide either to go ahead or to terminate the program. The program as stated thus far still in this budget does not have a levy impact. You want to let it sit, it can sit. There are no monies more additional allocated through this budget to that particular program, correct?
That is correct, your worship, and to add, staff aren't incurring any more costs on the file until we know what the status of the D-scope is. So professionally, we need to wait till we have the status. There's no sense of pulling quicker before the pin. There's also an issue in how perception is. If we pulled this grant before we wait, do we want to perceptually have that as BAM's image going forward on provincial or other federal grants going forward? We need to patiently wait. Yes, I know it's past the period they've described. I truly believe we'll get an answer before March 30th because that is the fiscal calendar year end for the federal government. We are hopeful we get an answer this month. The second we have something, Thomas and myself will come back with the results, the options, and go forward.
Well,
Mhm.
then if March 30 is the federal fiscal year end, then why don't we make the first meeting in April? We just make a final decision on this, to be fair to the Hall Foundation, ratepayers and stuff. We just pick a date.
Staff would hope the federal government have it done before their fiscal year end, but I cannot tell you. We were hopeful we had an answer before the end of December of 23. We still don't have an answer today.
Kind of something, it kind of seems like even the letter from the Stratford Hall Foundation is like, hey, what are we doing? Right? Like, so, well, what are we doing? So I don't know. To me, it seems like, oh, okay, pick the second council meeting in April. What's it been?
But
Well over a year.
But also to clarify Deputy Mayor's questions, whether this project goes forward or not, those expenditures are still gonna have to happen. And at that time, staff will come back with, okay, council wants this decision. This is the outcome and ramifications. We have to spend here, here, and here to deal with these A and B issues. But we're not at that bridge yet on the status of the D scope. Staff are doing their best to get us there. That's why we had higher maintenance in those lines. We're trying our best to get to that point. And I understand the frustration from the SHF. They can't book. They're sitting on a FCC Spirit grant. Staff are frustrated too. We're trying to budget 10-year capital, a 2-year operating with waiting on an answer, and it's holding up a bunch of reserves, it's holding a bunch of line items, and it's strategically slowing us down. But this was the application we made. This is the D-scope you requested. It is a large ticket grant. I do not think it'd be in the best interest that we would pull up before we have the status. It would look like we did a knee-jerk reaction and we couldn't patiently wait. We have big grants that we want to apply through in the future, like the stormwater with the DMAT, like other stuff that could come back open with the OSIP formula. So professionally, the course of action is be patient and wait. And if it does go long in the tooth, then the conversation is with the CAO and the mayor on speaking out with the MP, the MPP again on where we're at with the file. And using that course rather than knee-jerk reaction. But that is my professional opinion.
I would hardly think picking a hard date in the end of April is a knee-jerk reaction.
Counselor Emerson, when this was first applied for in August of 2019, it was August of 2020 when I finally heard from the MPP for Elgin, Middlesex, London, who telephoned to tell me Bayham was recommended. That's the provincial side. We did not hear from the federal side until January 21, and then told we couldn't tell him. That's a year and a half after. So frustrated? Yes. Absolutely. I don't understand why is the same program only scaled back is taking so long. So if you wish, if council wishes to put a terminal date on this, you can. The advice that we give them is don't do it. And at this time, my advice is don't kill it yet. It has no levy impact on the operational budget we're discussing tonight.
Yeah, I get that.
When we
Well,
come
well,
forward,
no, but thanks,
Yeah.
thanks for the timeline stuff.
Okay.
I can appreciate that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we have to appreciate
yes,
people that are wanting to move on with their lives too.
you're correct.
right?
And,
So-
and it's been identified that, yes, there's another grant in play that has till the end of the year to be used. And I would really hate to lose that, but that, I get it. I'm almost done.
Okay.
Almost, almost. It is a frustrating process. Keep in mind that there's a level of politics being played out there in the countryside. I'm not just saying around this horseshoe or even at the MP or MP level. I don't know what's going on bureaucracy. We've made inputs. But I think being patient is the way to go. And but we have a harder nut to crack, and that is a large operational budget. Yes. Now, Councillor Chilcott.
Thank you. I was just gonna say the grant that the SHF has, I don't believe is actually dependent on getting the ISIP grant.
No, it's not.
It's just to get the equipment to go into a kitchen, should we be able to build one. So I don't
Because-
think that that's really an issue.
Which always could be procured and put into storage. too.
Exactly.
Correct.
As long as it gets,
As long as it's purchased on the dock with a certain date, it meets criteria.
right,
Thank-
that's what I'm saying, the $25,000 is really,
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. Appreciate it. Which brings us right back to what do you want to do with the comments? I think you are absolutely correct. We are in a precarious position here. Can we afford to fund these additional ones? I'm not sure that we can. The one that I think, and I think you raised, Councilor Emerson, is the one that is probably helpful to members of our community would be the request for the East Elgin assistance. Is it something we can accommodate? I don't know. At the full request level of $3,000, not within our current budget structure, not if you want to reduce expenditures. But is it something you wish to include, or is it something we can't afford to do? Councilor Chilcott.
would that not go when we do the applications for the grants? Wouldn't it be put there? Like,
Well,
you
that,
wouldn't do that now, right? You would
that-
do that at
then
that time.
that
If
implies
we have,
what you wish to do with these comments. Do you wish to receive them? Do you wish to acknowledge one and move it in for potential?
I would do that.
That's what we should acknowledge that, because that's like a social service or for the, that, and then move that forward and see what happens in that $7,000 portion.
I'm good with that.
Respectively, we've only spent between 5 and 6 to last year, so the most we could offer for a grant would be 1,000 to 1,500.
That's what I'm thinking.
Oh, absolutely. And I
You're
don't
not giving
believe,
a full on.
No, we're
You're
not-
I don't
we're not-
believe
just giving
that,
up half.
no, I think what council's contemplating tonight is taking that particular request and just setting it aside for consideration.
Yes.
So the other comments is what I'm trying to get us down to. How do you want to do it?
Yeah. Oh,
Deputy Mayor?
sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor. I was just gonna ask a clarification question.
Please.
On the grants, section, Megan, you mentioned that you were bringing forward a report to kind of streamline how people apply for that, social assistance. So will that be done in Q1? So we'll know what the community is asking for and we'll know whether we can afford to send a little bit of the leftover funding to,
Okay, which brings
This
us
is-
down
right?
to the point being still preserve that particular request. What's the other comments? What do you want to do?
Okay,
And if you are thinking of in the budget itself of cementing that $7,000 budget item, if that's what you're thinking,
yes.
you don't have to. You can deal with one issue at a time. The comments, what do you want to do with it? I have a mover to receive for information.
Receive for information and you can
Draw the one.
note that one item.
Are we doing the comments, the correspondence, or the addenda?
All together.
Okay. And does council around the table want to acknowledge the correspondence from the East Elgin Community Assistance Program as part of that?
Yes.
Okay. Are we going to refer it to municipal assistance discussion for consideration at that time? Is that how? Okay, give me 30 seconds.
So in essence, so your worship, in essence, whatever's remaining in the pot would go to them.
Pardon me?
Good idea, actually.
'Cause
But not
that
necessarily.
that would fill the envelope. That's what you're committed to. But you also remember, clerk will clarify, I'm pretty sure each of those groups have to put an application and you guys pick
Yeah.
forward. So then you'd have
That's
to
right.
consider
We would
as
see
you
it.
go down, how much money is left for this one group.
Correct.
Agreed. That doesn't necessarily mean that each group's going to get what they asked for. But if you're going to, and that doesn't mean that we haven't made a decision yet of what that particular assistance grant bundle is going to look like. Is that? Okay, all we're doing is working our way through one piece at a time.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, the motion would read that all 2024-2025 draft operating budget correspondence, public comments, and addenda be received for information, and that council acknowledge the correspondence from the East Elgin Community Assistance Program, and that further consideration of this item be referred to the municipal assistance discussions.
That meet your needs, Counselor Chilcott?
Yes.
Would you be willing to second that, Counselor Emerson? We're getting somewhere. Megan.
Oh,
All in favor? Okay, that's carried. Thank you. Dealt with comments. Now we're getting into the interesting meat. Does anyone have any ideas, suggestions, comments on any cuts to the operating budget that you're thinking of? Keep in mind, there are usually two ways to reduce a budget or reduce a budget impact. You either grow the assessment base, we can't do tonight, or you cut services.
Hmm.
What do you want to do? Counselor Chilcott,
I think we need to go through and look at the wants and see which ones we can cut.
which wants are those?
There's beautification, there's the grants for the municipal festivals. Maybe they don't get them this year. There's a lot of things.
That's interesting. We just moved a particular over.
That's why I was trying to just receive it, because I said that at the time, that we may not have that grant.
Okay.
And if we don't, they get nothing, right?
Zero increase. in that whole component.
Right, but there's not enough money for it.
Your worship, maybe it's easier.
Just- Thank you, Laura. I'll come back to you. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. Just a comment, if I may. I have to congratulate staff. Thank you very much for the work that you've done on this budget. It is a bare bones budget and we've stripped it down, I think, I've gone over this like 5 different times. I really don't know where else we can really cut the budget without it significantly impacting service. And to be quite honest, if we're looking at an 11% change in that operating budget, I would not recommend cutting anything more than what we've already done. I think we need to maintain our current level of service while we move forward. It's tough times right now, but we have to stay the course. We made a commitment to try and pay off this Ojibwa loan, and I think we're on the right track, and it hurts, but I think if we do any more cutting, I really believe it's going to impact level of service, and I don't think that's fair to the residents. So I would personally, in my opinion, I'd like to keep the budget where it is and leave it
All right, thank you.
as presented. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Lauren, you had something to add?
My only comment, your worship, and was to council was, if council wants to go through the budget and come back, then it can come back as either a second meeting or directing staff on each of the lines or departments if they have that as their desire. If council is willing to accept this budget tonight, staff are willing to move forward with it, but staff are looking for direction.
So, Thomas?
Yeah, I want to, through you, Mr. Mayor, I just want to follow the deputy mayor's comments really quickly and just reiterate that this wasn't presented in front of council lightly. There was a lot of internal discussion over the last 2 months. We started internally at 22.5%. And we started that high because 17.4% is the Ojibwa transfer. And that is council's main priority over the next couple of years, is to put ourselves in a position next year to pay off the remaining debt. And before council tonight is 11.34. So we have drained the reserves as much as possible within the scope of what we consider professionally reasonable to put it in front of council. If we didn't have the Ojibwa in this budget, we would have started at 6.3, which is far more manageable. You apply all the reserves that we've applied, all the transfers, you pull out the sidewalk program as you suggested, we would be looking at a negative 5.5. That's how much we've pulled out of this budget and supplemented it with reserves to make it palatable, given council's priority. So just for context purposes, Mr. Mayor, I wanted to provide that to you and council and to everyone watching, that there's a lot of internal discussion and a lot of reserves used to bring this down while preserving council's priority.
Thank you for those comments. Councillor Chilcott.
Thank you. I do agree that staff has done a fantastic job on the budget. But my understanding is, in order for it to be affordable to the majority of BAM residents, it still needs to lose $100,000. Is that correct, or am I off the wall?
Through the mayor to the councillor, affordability is determined by what this council thinks is affordable to residents. Staff have brought forward a budget at what we can achieve. We have some remaining not discretionary expenditures, but each of them come with consequences and service level to the community. So if council wants to get it to under 10, which is what 100 is, then you would have to come back and we'd have to arbitrarily go through each department and surgically find money or reduce level of service.
Just one final point to the comment regarding, affordability, and just back to the start of the presentation when Lauren was discussing the 2024 projected change to the levy and how it would impact based on assessment. So on the first page, residential at a $250,000 assessment, you're looking at a $203.43 change over 2023. If we were to pull $100,000 out of the budget and bring the levy increase down to, what would that be, Lauren, around 9.8, 9.7?
About that.
That reduces that $203 amount by $17.90 approximately over the course of a year. So $1.50 a month per household relative to the assessment, just for context sake. So again, council really determines the level of affordability with respect to its priorities and what's tabled in front of it. Leave it with you, Mr. Mayor.
Counselor Emerson.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it seems like the managers and core services have kept the budgets almost flat. So I commend that on like roads and public works and sewage and water. And it seems like a lot of the increase is coming from non-core. So isn't it possible to send that back and wildfires or other departments that are higher percentage and say, hey, look, can you find something in these line items to bring you under 10, like these two fellas did? So maybe the fire department can squeeze a little bit out, and maybe parks can squeeze it a little bit out, and then we can get under 10% or the 100,000 and leave roads and public works alone. Right? That's what I would say. Just send that back and say, hey, this is what we came up with. Can you see anything here that we can maybe save some money?
Well, I think you're hinting at exactly what the point is. Either council need to re-examine the priority. That retirement, or you're gonna have to take a raise or two those non-core areas.
Yeah, just
And
little
those
bits
non-core
here.
areas, you know, that's what I'm getting at. Those will probably have the larger screaming coming at us, which is fine, and I'm willing to show them, but we need to be responsible for this. So if that's what council would like, we'd like to go through and have a department review by review.
Yep, that's what.
Then we can do that. And I think we're prepared to do that as well. Question is, from a timing perspective, and if I understand correctly, towards it may not be immediate, it might be a March meeting. Because you are expecting your year ends to have a better fulsome review of what took place. Got perhaps, you tell me, more staff vacations will be over, they'll be here.
Through your worship, you have consideration that some staff have already have vacation booked in Q1. So if you're asking for each department head to come back with executive or budget style of options, you gotta factor in, you have vacation commitments that are already booked on the books. I have to get year end done, which really starts to ramp up the last week of January, the first week of February. We also have the year end reports, year end reserve, unaudited balances, year end surplus or deficit. There's no sense of coming back in February because you need 4 more pieces of the puzzle. And a month later, it makes no difference for our procurement if we come back either the last week of February or the first week in March and you guys have the whole holistic picture. Maybe you know the status of the hall here. Maybe you know the status on a few other things, and we can put the rest of the puzzle for 24 and 25. But I'm going to put something in context for council. If you go to page 15 of the budget, it is a schedule called summary, net revenue or expenditure. And I want to make this very clear. The departments that you're picking on actually have the least net increase. Public Works has been shoestrung for years. I cannot shoestring it anymore. It actually has the biggest percentage net increase. And it's not a reflection of Steve or the staff. They have done their best through the years. It's a reflection of we have held the line and the line is broke. So I respectfully disagree with the other departments being picked on because they're not as high of increase.
I know, he wasn't.
No, I know, but Public Works actually is the biggest driver outside of capital.
That's not even saying. I
No,
was talking non-core.
Those ones have the least increase.
I don't know, 30%.
Then council needs to have a true to level discussion of what they accept of non-discretionary money that they want to cut. You want to get rid of some parks, you want to get rid of do some this, some of that, or discretionary. You want to do some of this and you want some of that? Because the other stuff is regulated by regulation, contracts and commitments. And those are not for council.
You actually, I have to tell you misunderstood what I said. Yeah. So I was not picking on Public Works.
No. Public Works, but if you look at the net summary report, council moves there, they'll see the change of the net budget impact from 23 to 24. If you look at Public Works, they're 140,000 more in the levy.
Yeah.
Capital, almost 300,000. You go across to museum budget, $1,000. You go across to planning, okay? They're down 6,000.
Agreed, but that's driven by activity, correct?
Correct,
It's awfully hard to predict.
but it's net of revenues and expenditure, which is
Understood.
levy impact.
I think what you're gonna find through the exercise, is it's going to be extremely difficult to get it. So I guess the question I need to ask, what's an acceptable target number for it? If it's 0, you ain't gonna get there.
I don't know,
Yeah.
under 10 anyway. I mean,
Alright.
people are going and working and they have 7% here and inflation and everything else, and then they come home and have to pay 10% more for a place they live. Right, or whatever, 11,
Understand?
right? So, I don't know, it's tough times. I don't think it was an unrealistic expectation. Maybe we can say like, oh, maybe instead of 18 cuts, it's 12
Okay.
cuts or 6 cuts or something. And so
Yeah.
it's like get under 10% by 1,000 cuts. Right?
Yep, I guess.
Instead of death by 2 cuts. So,
Going back to your figure again, we're looking at, it was $17 savings if you get her down 1%.
If we get it down, if you get the levy down by $100,000, that brings us from 11.34 down to high nines, 9.7, 9.8. It's an effective change at a $250,000 in assessment of approximately $17.90 for the year.
So $183.
On
versus
250.
Per 250.
For 250. What's the average assessment in Bayham?
275,
2016 values, Joe.
because we're still on the old roll.
well, we won't be on the old roll forever, but
No, I appreciate that. That's part of the
Right.
problem where we are.
I still like, and to defer it back to managers for not. And because they're the experts at what we can cut without hurting service a little bit or something,
Reduce that.
you know? I don't know, like, for example, Parks is up 30%. Well, maybe we can just do 12 cuts in the lawn instead of 18, or minimize that, or raise it to 5 inches of grass or something. and
Council's
just go through
prepared
stuff
for a
like that.
holistic review, a level service for every department, and they can tell their constituents how you're gonna cut less, have less toilets and all these other things.
Yeah.
Each one of these cuts all have pain throughout every budget, and they impact every department in every ward. And I know it sucks, and I know you guys wanna get it below 10. But to cut 100, you're gonna have to scalp many things to get to 100.
Thomas.
Just a quick point. I think the discussion around the horseshoe was regarding discretionary services. Parks, for instance, was brought up. If council is interested in referring this back to staff for a review of discretionary level of service, I'm sure that could be taken into account. To send it back for a holistic review of discretionary and legislated services, which covers the entire gamut. We would be happy to do that as well, but it would be substantially more to do that. Our discretionary allotment in the operating budget is 14%. So you're looking at, a review of 14%, trying to save $100,000 versus a review of 100%. But I haven't heard anything around this table yet tonight about review of legislated or non-discretionary services. It sounds like it's all based in discretionary. We'd be happy to do that. We'd be happy to follow council's direction. We just need to understand if council has a target for the notional increase, and what departments or what services council wants to hone in on. But the treasurer is not wrong that if we're looking at some of these smaller discretionary funds, it is going to be difficult for us to get to $100,000 decrease. So it'll be difficult for us to get it under a 10% notional increase.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, okay, was no talk about legislated or core services or anything like that. It's more like, maybe we can't get 100,000, but we can take a second look at it and see if we can shave some more. I mean, the ratepayers deserve that anyway before we just right? Just take a look and see, maybe there's something, that won't affect quality of life so much. I don't know, right?
Yeah.
Well, I do know, actually, but that, a second look doesn't hurt, right?
No, and I don't think it will, and I believe staff have volunteered to bring that back. I'm telling you, it probably will be March. It should not affect our procurement because your capital's already been approved in principle moving forward. That's acceptable? Okay, I'm going with Dan first because you didn't speak up. Dan?
Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. Don't shoot me before I'm done. My dream would be to have the Ojibwa debt plus inflationary rate. You used it many times today, the inflationary rate. That would be my dream goal. I'll settle for something under 10. And I'll start with, you can take my salary as a counselor back to 2023 numbers. And I'll volunteer to cut the grass at the Smuck Cemetery for free. So there's 2 cuts out of 1,000.
Okay, well,
Pays theirs, it's not in the levy, but thank you.
okay, thank you, Counselor Chilcott. You're offering to cut grass?
No, you wouldn't want me cutting grass. No, I just want to know what negative impact bringing the budget back in March would be as opposed to today. Okay, I just wanted to make sure there wasn't, that's what I thought, but
Agreed. No, the point being, whether you settle the operating budget today or you do it in March, the procurement side isn't going to be impacted because you already approved that in principle back in October.
Right.
So we're moving forward.
I mean, I would like to see more moved out of it. I understand that you guys worked very hard to get to where you are. I mean, it's amazing what you have done, but I also want to make sure that we haven't left anything on the table that we could remove.
I will caution council that some of the proposed reductions and cuts are not gonna be attainable and they're all gonna come with issues. So you might see things that you're not gonna like, but they're gonna be those kind of expenses that you can't, that they're not legislated. And as Thomas alluded, if we're gonna get into anything that's non-legislated, you take away the Ojibwe debt carrying, there's not much left. And some of those are touchy-feely in the community aspects and other. And they're all gonna come with warts and questions to the community. And I understand that council wants to get to the 100 and get it under 10. But each of those cuts are gonna have consequences.
I don't think we're gonna get to 100 with.
I don't either. Counselor Pros.
With all the increases in the cost of living, right? There's 7% food increase this coming year. The interest rate is killing everyone. Is it so bad to say, let's cut some services for the next few years until interest rates go back down and we can bring those services back up? Is that such a terrible thing to say? People are scrounging, making close to $30 an hour and they cannot buy sufficient groceries. And we're worried about services. We should be worried about services, but is it a bad thing to say, let's maybe take a
I'm-
2-year break while interest rates are so high?
I'm gonna say this to the deputy, through the mayor, to the councillor. I've been here since the first year we brought in Project Ojibwe debt. We were staring down 20+ that year. We slashed and burned the capital down, and then we had to build the capital back up because we tried to make it so the ratepayers can afford. We have deferred and slapped and put glue here and bubble gum there and done everything we can. Reality is, we're at a cost point now where we can barely maintain the level of service we're doing. So if we want to get there, it's attainable, and I totally understand and the viability and the cost structure, and people are struggling. But we're carrying a debt that's not providing a level of service to any of the community for the last 8 years. And we're trying to get it off our books so we can provide a better quality of life for our residents after March of 25. And we were gonna experience this pain in 24 and 25. So whether we have a little bit of savings this year, there is some pain next year, but there is light at the end of the tunnel.
thank you for those comments. And Deputy Mayor, you had comments? Which, withdraw those comments?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's, I mean, I appreciate everyone's thoughts and, around the table, all the way around. I think I really have absolutely zero appetite to cut further services, so I don't support going back to having a look. I don't think it's gonna make a big enough impact. And then it's just gonna hurt that level of service that we're already providing. So that's just my comment. However, and I appreciate Counselor Froze's comments. I think where I am concerned though is that if we're trying to cut when everything around us is going up, it's only going to hurt us even more at the end, in my opinion. So that's just a comment. This is a tough process. But it's a necessary process, so it's good.
No, it is a tough process.
Mhm.
It is a tough process. And I would anticipate that, I appreciate the treasurer's remarks. I appreciate your remarks, down at the center table as well. We are looking at trying to find something to maintain, affordability aspect of this. I don't know what that level is. Honest to God. I don't know if you're going to be able to find savings that you're looking for. Going back through a line by line, it's, non-core budgets. If you want to kill the tourism side of it, we can do that.
Well,
But I
then,
mean, there's number of businesses, within the community that are. Is that something you want to do? Do you want to, reduce the number? Oh, I don't know about reducing the number of cuts or not. No, I don't know what that's going to do for us.
I don't know, okay, then how about on the revenue side? Why don't we sell one lot, dedicate it to fund, grab a couple $100,000 for the budget, free up some money and dedicate, one lot sale to debt retirement for the sub?
Those are contemplated. We don't particularly have control of those particular lots, but I think those, future revenue streams are actually contemplated and retired like that. There's nothing there. But I will make a suggestion for you. And it's a Hail Mary. It's risky. But we did it before and we got lucky because we had surpluses to do it. You initiated, through a good argument, Councilor Froze back in 2019, establishing that retirement. 1,000 a year. We had a couple of years where things come up really hot. We reached in and we grabbed that capital side to underwrite the operating rate. We got lucky because we had surpluses to fund it every year. Take that right now. Reach in, grab a portion of that Ojibwa payment. Underwrite your rate. Take the risk that you might recover enough of the surplus to be funded in the year, or you may not. If you don't, then we may get stuck with a portion of the debt in 2025. So that's the option for council. That's your Hail Mary. Councilor Chilcott.
So going on what you're saying about the taking money from the Ojibwa. What would you, I don't know what you would take it, like at the end of it, you would, whatever you've taken out, you're gonna have to finance somehow. Or hopefully we'll get the money back. But at the worst case scenario, we're gonna have to finance it.
If at the end of the time, if, for example, you took 100,000 out and you did not have 100,000 surplus, you either got to make it up next year, or consider the fact that you're not going to retire the entire debt in 2025, and you're going to carry something forward for another 5-year term.
we could also float some money on a short-term line of credit with our short-term borrowing bylaw as well. So if we were under, let's say hypothetically, under 600K, we could float it for up to a year. And then drag the remaining debt remaining in 26. So that way we're not looking for a brand new debt term from an institution. What the mayor's suggesting comes with a level of risk. We have performed multiple years of good surpluses. Fortunately, 23, we have a deficit. And I cannot tell you with good conscience that we're gonna have a surplus in 24, only 8 days in there. Staff are doing its best, and we have held the expense, and we held it. But 23 was the year that broke a lot of apartments and a lot of expenditures. And we have reflected these costs to reflect what costs are today in 2024. And your worship might be right, we might be able to squeeze a surplus and repurpose that money there. There obviously is consideration of sale of assets and sale of land. We brought back a staff report. Staff are still working through those processes on those parcels. They take time. We still have time in the runway before March of 2025.
Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. Looking at the projected budget for 2025, would something like that be better suited for that?
I don't know. See,
Yeah.
we're looking at 2 years of pain. to get
Mhm.
there.
Yeah,
And the point, maybe the discussion is, you're going to steal something from that fund this year, underrate your tax rate. Next year, you might find that you're gonna wanna do it again, but if you do, then I'm saying you run the high risk, 2025, that you're gonna carry over a portion of that debt,
right.
and you can't retire it all. So what's the goal of council?
So I'm guessing, like, the question is the not paying off the entire debt worth $17 a year on every $250,000?
I believe they have run the numbers. That's what I'm trying to get at. It's,
Item of consideration for council, 2025, right now we have a placeholder of 336, which is the interest and the principal. We only have that for 3 months. We do have additional pledge there, so we decided our debt carrying cost for 3 months is 27,000 a month, 81K. You would come up with another 250 right there. So you could find some relief in 25 with that. You still might have a small 350 to 500 difference. Use the short-term line of credit. Maybe we have some answers back on a few other things. There is time. If you want to use it as a mechanism today, you still do. But I'm gonna remind council, there is still a fair amount of heavy lifting to come. Items of consideration in this year, being diligent and fruitful in how we handle in your expenditures and how we go about the 25 capital in October, and how we handle what we anticipate or project in our surplus in February. Because by the time March 25 comes around, we'll know what our surplus is for 24. So there's our first hole. We'll have a further runway on where we're at with on the sale of asset reports and those considerations. Once council gets that before you, you're gonna have one option. Direct the money here or increase the debt there. You have one option today, but there's still more work to come. Budgets are challenging.
This one's particular.
Budgets are thought provoking. You're trying to achieve your number one strategic priority, which is debt elimination, March of 25. We have made conscious efforts the last several years to put substantial money in the reserve. We are still putting that away. We still have items for council consideration to move forward on that, to reduce that gap. You are right, we have to consider about affordability of residents. We do have 2 years of pain. We have more heavy lifting, items that might be unattainable or tenable that council has considered. But there's still work to be done to get us to the debt elimination in March. Which is staff is what I've been trying to do for the last 10 years. I've tried to terminate this debt on renewal. And all department heads have done everything they can to get us there. Sometimes it is exhausting us, and I've asked two things that have department heads more than I ever have. Or I've had to say no a lot more than I've ever had in the last couple of years.
You got too many ideas.
We know the consequences by getting the debt off our books. We know what it will do for when we have capital replacement renewal. We know at how much interest savings it'll save our residents. We know at how much cash flow this will come off our levy. 1.4 will come off our levy effective 26, provided we don't have a short term. That money can be repurposed in the community, whether it's the sidewalks we defer, whether it's this piece of equipment, or rebuilding back our reserves, or giving the ratepayers potentially a tax holiday and reduction for the year as a thank you for supporting us and getting through this.
Still have your house. All right. Okay. All right, it's a potential scheme. That's all I've thrown it out there. I didn't throw it out front because this one's really risky. Counselor Chilcott.
Thank you. Looking at it being $17 per $250,000 home per year versus taking money that we put away out of repaying our loan, I would almost want to bite the bullet this year and save that option for next year when there's a larger, it looks like there's going to be more problems next year.
12 to 13% next year is projecting.
And yeah, so if we can get through it this year and have a smaller increase for our taxpayers now and maybe look to it for next year. That make sense?
I understand what you're getting at.
Like if we have to take 100,000 out this year to meet it, then next year, do we have to take another 300,000 out? Then we're not doing what we need to do. If we can bite the bullet this year, then next year, maybe we'll be okay. And we won't have to
It
do
is
an
also
increase.
possible, with your worship to the counselor, that we know what the reserve balance is. We know what some other revenue, other sources will be. And maybe the ask in October won't be 1,000,001. Maybe the ask will be only 7. Because council's already done some heavy lifting.
Not fun, is it not?
It's not fun, but maybe on the revenue side, we could focus on getting more development here to bring the revenue side up too.
Yep.
And maybe speed or something, or make it more inviting for someone to come and build a house here or something. Right? And build on the revenue side. 'Cause I don't- it's a single lots or something. Be a levy on it.
2024 values.
Interest is coming down.
That's my
We shouldn't be
understanding.
inviting people here.
My understanding. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor, and I do agree with Counselor Chilcott in that I think we should save our poker chips for next year when it looks like we could use that a little bit more. I think the challenge moving forward, instead of maybe line by line, looking where we can cut, is maybe, and I know that staff already do a great job at this, but maybe it's time to look at some upper level funding that really should be coming down the pipe and looking at some aggressively seeking some grant opportunities and stuff moving forward.
Be careful
But-
what you ask.
Yes, no, and I am well aware, as long as it's not, yeah, 100% grant
Okay.
dollars,
I
100%
understand.
grant
I
dollars.
understand.
But I do think we're coming into a time frame on upper levels that there may be some funding coming down the pipe, so let's,
And you're right, but it's also very disheartening, and I'm gonna say this, and I don't care what the Ministry of Finance has to say. They gutted us for 200,000 this year.
Yeah.
Gutted us with no communication and no direction. And when I spoke with both the officials, they didn't tell me if we were at the bottom of the pain.
Hmm. something else to consider.
We're a rural municipality. They reduced our OSIF. We need a road and network to get our ratepayers and our businesses and our farms to our goods and their jobs. We need our OMPF to provide our services out here. And we got guttered and skewered by the Ministry of Finance on 2 items. On an envelope, they refuse to move to inflation indexed and they cap it. They disgustingly cap it. And it sucks.
Wow. Thank you for those comments. That is a situation beyond our control.
It is.
It's circumstance and cards that we've been dealt with. Notwithstanding, however, it gets down to the comfort level council has on what you want to do. Wish to do something with this tonight? You wish to put it off till March? Decision is still going to be the same. You had your hand up, Councillor Chilcott.
I was thinking that we should move to accept the budget as is tonight or as presented and look to find more revenues, as Councillor Emerson has stated.
Well,
Do our best.
One, just to make it clear. I think it's always wise to be looking for another revenue stream to keep moving. However, that will not impact the tax take for 24.
No,
That
it'll
will
help for
impact
next fall.
25. Just so everyone's clear. Of that particular motion that Councilor Chilcott was putting on the floor. There you go. Before I look for a seconder, any further discussion on that? Now I'll look for a second. Someone going to take that one? Can you read the book?
Yeah.
I believe it's just the drafted motion and the recommendation. So that report TR 0124 regarding 2024 to 2025 operating budget draft be received for information. And that the 2024 operating budget be approved and staff be directed to bring forward the 2024 tax rate bylaws.
Councilor Chilcott has moved. Do we have a second? Deputy Mayor Weiser. Now, any further discussion before I call the question? Not saying it's palatable. All in favor? Opposed? I know I'm the deciding factor here. I can't have a split council on this. Sorry. Pete. Now, how are we gonna get there, guys? Are we gonna take the risky move now?
Council would like us to come back with the exercise in March. We can try.
Puts us in the same spot. Because unless you're willing to go with the extra move or trim this sucker down, this decision's already been made. Kill this. I think it was a hard one to do, and I don't blame anybody for sure, but I'm just saying this has got to change. I'm saying this decision on the budget as presented has already been defeated by council. So now it either has to change, or your methodology of bringing it down has to change. Or you got to come back. Want to defer till March? We can defer to March, so we get discretionary. If you want, I don't think you're gonna get 100,000, but go ahead. I don't put a motion on the table. Table, put a motion on the table.
Well, that's my motion.
Okay, moved by Councilor Emerson to defer till, or would it be, or table till March?
We'll, putting something together. Okay, I think we can do something like this. Motion to read that report TR 0124, read 2024-2025 operating budget draft be received for information. That staff be directed to prepare a supplementary report identifying areas of potential cost savings and discretionary functional areas for the 2024-2025 draft operating budget. That the supplementary report be presented to council with the draft 2024-2025 operating budget at a second special budget meeting to consider the 2024-2025 draft operating budget in March 2024.
That-
Moved by Councilor
One
Emerson.
question. In that time span, March, can we look at possible asset dispersal or something on that side and the revenue side too, or is that not possible? Because you said there was reports coming.
Yes, so through you, Mr. Mayor to council, the original report came to council in Q1 of 2023. To move forward with the disposal of the largest assets that the municipality may consider requires us to formalize, the title on the property. We've been working with a solicitor on that to clarify the title. Once we have that clarified, we'll be able to move forward, but I don't have a timeline on when that might be. We're hoping it's going to be later in this quarter, though.
Okay, through you, Mr. Mayor, then can we just say, look at possible revenue streams, add that line in there? If we're gonna look at revenue costs down, we should look at revenue up before March too. Right,
I don't think I understand, Councilor Emerson.
well, he says it may not be ready, but it may be ready. So I'm saying if we're gonna look at the budget, then
Yes, okay, staff have already identified that those particular items that I think you're thinking
yeah,
are already going to be committed to debt retirement. They're not available as a revenue stream for this budget. That's the point that trying to get across.
okay,
There are no cookies left in the cookie jar.
Okay.
But we can still defer and look at things from a cost perspective of what may or may not be available. But I'm thinking we're gonna have to get really creative. Get a budget.
yeah, just some sober second thought, because I don't understand your option that you're saying, and we have
Okay,
to talk
that's
about it someplace, or I have to take a week or so to understand
No, that's fine.
what you're saying. And that's kind of like a revenue stream or
Potential
Kind of.
revenue
What's
stream.
potential revenue stream? So
that's what I'm asking for, one more line in that motion.
So you want another line in this particular motion?
Yeah, just if we're gonna look at expenses, we should look at any possibility of revenue increases or something. Just so it's not,
Potential cost savings, discretionary functional areas. That's what I have.
Potential cost savings and discretionary functional areas. Do you wanna, can you just? Well, that's one of the things we're looking at. I don't believe there are any revenue streams.
Your worship,
No,
and I would definitely say this, there's no more revenue streams.
Okay.
Presented in the operating. What you're considering is an item that will be used or possibly before the debt report. You're not gonna have the status of any of that report until later this year. And it only becomes a revenue stream when council decides to act upon it and make a decision call. And then you get net proceeds of whatever is considered. Until that, it's not a revenue stream.
all right, I understand. I was just maybe hoping Be a Hail Mary grant or something come before March or something.
Yeah,
Right?
be nice, but. All right,
All right, if the motion is what it is, then that's my motion, right?
all right. It's moved by Councilor Anderson, willing to second that, Councilor Rose, okay. I'm gonna call the question. All in favor, deferral to March? For this motion. Opposed? Okay. 3-1. It's carried. Let's do the bylaw to confirm proceedings. Right, mover and seconder for following the confirming bylaw 2024-001. The first, second, third time to find the pass. I need a mover and seconder. Councilor Emerson. And that's seconder, Councilor Rose. All in favor? And the adjournment, the council meeting be adjourned at whatever time it is. 10:07 PM. Thank you. Mover and seconder, Councilor Rose. Councilor Emerson, second, all in favor? Thank you for joining us this evening. Budgets are never fun, and we will act this again. Thank you. Have a good evening.